Chapter 4752. I'll remember it in 1 second. Wonderful, no pop-up window free reading. Silence. A deathly silence. In the open space in front of the loft, many of the Hongqiang gang's higher-ups were dumbstruck as they watched everything unfold. Their eyes were filled with fear. Zhuan slowly walked towards the loft, and the higher-ups retreated to the sides, taking the initiative to open up a path for Zhuan. Zhuan was too strong, so strong that it made them fearful. Even Shi Luan was forced back by a single move, so they were even less of a match for him. So strong. Shichang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong all opened their mouths in shock. Shichang reacted and hurriedly followed behind Zhuan towards the loft. In front of the broken loft, Shi Luan's pupils shrank to the size of needles. Seeing Mu Feng getting closer and closer, he kept retreating as a trace of fear rose in his heart. Every time Zhuan took a step forward, Shi Luan took a step back until he was pressed against the wall behind the loft. Only then was he unable to retreat any further. Who is it? How dare you barge into the gang leader's bedroom? Do you want to die? An elder in a loose robe walked out from the right side of the loft. His face was filled with displeasure as he looked at Zhuan and the others. However, when he saw Shi Luan being forced into a corner, as well as Shichang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong behind Zhuan, he couldn't help but be stunned. Lord Shi Luan. The elder's eyes were filled with fear as he looked at Zhuan, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. How could he not see that Shi Luan was forced into a corner by this unfamiliar youth? He clearly knew how strong Shi Luan was, but now he was being forced to retreat by this youth. It was obvious that this youth's strength was even stronger. Dr. Xie, if anything happens to my father, you can apologize with your life. Shichang coldly glanced at the elder, then quickly walked towards the inner room. Dr. Xie was stunned, but he didn't dare to speak. His eyes were fixed on Zhuan, because the latter's cold gaze was also looking at him. Phew! Let's go inside and have a look. Zhuan's gaze first landed on Shilan, and then he glanced at the physician. His powerful aura locked onto the two of them. Shi Luan's expression was unsightly, but he didn't dare refuse. Just now, half of his fist had been chopped off, and he understood that if they really fought, he wouldn't be a match for this kid, and it was very likely that he would be killed directly. Shi Luan silently walked into the room. When Dr. Xie saw that Shi Luan had complied, he naturally did not dare to disobey Zhuan's words. Zhuan followed behind with Yang Zue and Yu Hong. However, his aura never relaxed. It was constantly locked onto Shi Luan and Xie Yi, so they didn't dare act rashly. In the inner room, there was a middle-aged man who was as thin as a match lying on the bed. This middle-aged man's skin was incomparably red, and his expression was extremely ugly. At this moment, his breathing was extremely hurried, and his chest was constantly heaving up and down. Father! The moment Shichang saw this middle-aged man, her tears fell uncontrollably. She hurriedly walked to the side of the bed and tightly grasped the middle-aged man's skinny right arm. The middle-aged man's consciousness was clearly blurred, and he didn't respond at all to Shichang's calls. His aura was growing weaker and weaker, like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any moment. Gang leader! Yang Zue and Yu Hong walked over as well, and their eyes were filled with sorrow as they looked at the middle-aged man who was beyond recognition on the bed. Zhuan silently looked at the middle-aged man. He knew that the latter was Shichang's father and the gang leader of the Great Rose Gang. Dr. Xie, didn't you say that you've already suppressed the fire poison in my father's body when we went to search for the black phoenix flower? At that time, my father was still very conscious, and his condition was much better. What's going on now? Why has his condition changed? Why is his condition so bad? Shichang raised her head, glared at Dr. Xie, and shouted herself hoarse. Dr. Xie, you must have done something to the gang leader. Otherwise, he wouldn't have become so severely injured, almost to the point of death. Yang Zue also glared at Dr. Xie angrily. Dr. Xie took a few steps back in fright, but he looked at Shi Luan behind him as if he was asking for help. Shi Luan's expression was dark, and he didn't say a word. Now that Zhuan's aura had locked onto him, how could he dare speak up for Dr. Xie? Wait, I'm the only one who can save the gang leader now. Although you brought back the black phoenix flower, Do you know how to use it to cure the fire poison in the gang leader's body? Dr. Xie forced himself to remain calm. Yang Zhe and Yu Hong, who had been about to attack, were stunned. Dr. Xie was right. Although they had brought back the black phoenix flower, they didn't know how to use it to save the gang leader. When Dr. Xie saw the hesitation on Yang Zhe and Yu Hong's faces, a hint of a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I'm the only one who can save the gang leader now. Is this how you speak to me? Shiqiang, Yang Zhe, and Yu Hong gnashed their teeth in hatred. Although they knew that Dr. Xie was probably behind the deterioration of the gang leader's condition, they didn't dare to directly harm him. They still needed him to save the gang leader. Grind the black phoenix flower into powder and brew it with ice stones, golden clouds, and green oil into a medicinal decoction for your gang leader to drink. It'll be able to control the fire poison in his body. Zhuan suddenly spoke and explained the method to brew the black phoenix flower in full detail. Dr. Xie, who had thought that victory was within his grasp, turned pale when he heard this. He looked at Zhuan in disbelief. This young man actually knew the method to brew the black phoenix flower, and it seemed like he knew it in even more detail than him. Who is this guy? Shiqiang, Yang Zhe, and Yu Hong's eyes lit up. They naturally noticed the change in Dr. Xie's expression and knew that Zhuan's method was probably correct. Yang Zhe, Yu Hong, seize Dr. Xie. Shiqiang said coldly. Yang Zhe and Yu Hong smiled coldly. They took a step forward and grabbed Physician Xie. Then, they used their divine force to bind his body and threw him to the ground. Dr. Xie, when my father wakes up, he'll punish you. There's also you, uncle. Shiqiang looked coldly at Dr. Xie, then raised her head to look at Shi Luan behind her. Shi Luan's face was gloomy, but he remained silent. Now that Zhuan was beside him, he didn't dare to act rashly. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. Shiqiang, Yang Zhe, and Yu Hong followed Zhuan's method and began to brew the black phoenix flower decoction on the spot. About 4 hours later, the black phoenix flower soup was finally successfully brewed. Shiqiang carried the decoction and sat by the bed. She helped the gang leader up and leaned him against the headrest. Then she slowly poured the decoction into his mouth. When the gang leader finished drinking the decoction, he suddenly vomited a large mouthful of black blood. Moreover, he continued to vomit. When he stopped vomiting, he fainted again. Chapter 4753. I'll remember it in 1 second. Wonderful, no pop-up window free reading. Shi Luan's face darkened as he looked at Shihan's increasingly rosy complexion. He knew very well that once Shihan regained consciousness, he wouldn't be able to escape the blame. At that time, he might not even be able to keep his life. Physician Xie's face was pale with fright. His legs went soft and he almost fell to the ground. Shiqiang, Yang Zhe, and Yu Hong were pleasantly surprised. They could clearly feel Shihan's originally weak aura gradually becoming stronger. The black phoenix flower was indeed effective, and the method Zhuan gave them to refine the black phoenix flower was completely correct. Although Shihan was still unconscious, due to the effects of the black phoenix flower, his entire body was spasming and he was constantly coughing up black blood. Every time he coughed up a pool of black blood, Shihan's aura would become stronger and the redness on his face would fade, returning to a healthy wheat-colored complexion. The more Zhuan watched, the more shocked he became. Others might not be able to see anything, but he could see that the poison Shihan was coughing up wasn't just fire poison. There were many other types of toxins as well. These toxins mixed with fire poison were difficult to detect, but Zhuan could see it clearly. Zhuan glanced coldly at Physician Xie and Shi Luan. He knew that the two of them had probably poisoned Shihan's medicinal decoction while he was bedridden. Otherwise, Shihan wouldn't have vomited so many times. What? All of a sudden, Shihan spat out a big mouthful of black blood. His closed eyes suddenly opened. A pair of blazing light flashed deep inside his eyes. At this moment, Zhuan's attention also fell on Shihan. He noticed that the latter's condition was much better than before. Although his body was still weak, he was basically fine. Father! Shiqiang was pleasantly surprised. She hugged Shihan's emaciated body in her arms and tears fell like rain down her cheeks. Gang Master! Yang Zhe and Yu Hong also looked at Shihan in surprise, their hearts filled with excitement. Shi Chang. Shi Han returned Shi Chang's hug and his gaze fell on Yang Zue and Yu Hong. He smiled and said, Yang Zue, Shi Chang, thank you. Although Shi Han didn't know exactly what had happened, he could guess that it was probably the combined efforts of Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong that he was able to offend them this time. Yang Zue and Yu Hong waved their hands and said, Don't misunderstand, Gang Master. It's all thanks to Big Brother Zhue that you were saved this time. Brother Zhue? Shi Han looked puzzled, but her eyes were fixed on an unfamiliar young man behind her. Father, Yang Zue and Yu Hong are right, this is all thanks to Brother Zhun. His name is Zhun, we met him in the 100 Beasts forest. Shi Qiang smiled through her tears, and she pointed her finger towards the young man behind her as she introduced him with a smile. The more Shi Han listened to Shi Qiang's story, the more shocked he became, and the way he looked at Zhuowen changed completely. Yun hadn't just saved the lives of Shi Qiang and the others, he'd even found the dark phoenix flower for them. Moreover, he'd even fought Shi Luan upon returning to the Grand Rose Gang, and he'd suppressed Shi Luan before saving Shi Han in the end. Shi Han forced himself to stand up, and then he cupped his hands toward Zhuan from afar and said, Young brother Zhuan, thank you for taking care of Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong, and thank you for saving their lives. Please accept a bow from Shi Han. Zhuan waved his hand and said, Gang Master Shi Han, there's no need to be so courteous. Quickly get up. I got along well with Shi Chang and the others, and that's why I helped them. Shi Han nodded when he heard this, and then he thanked Zhuan a few more times before his gaze descended onto Xie Chang and Shi Luan. Xie Chang, Shi Luan, how audacious of both of you to join forces with the intention of killing me. Xie Chang, I've taken good care of you. Shi Luan, we're brothers. But all of you disregarded our relationship for the sake of the position of Gang Master. All of you are pigs. You're worse than dogs. Even though Shi Han was extremely weak and emaciated, the dignified aura on his body wasn't weak in the slightest, and he shouted furiously at Shi Luan and Xie Chang. Xie Chang was terrified to the point he knelt on the ground and repeatedly kowtowed to Shi Han as he admitted his mistake. Gang Master, this has nothing to do with me. It was Shi Luan who forced me. He roped in most of the higher-ups of the gang and even forced me to say that if I didn't do as he said, then he would kill me. I was forced to do so, so I hope that Gang Master can spare me this time on account of my many years of hard work and meritorious service. Shi Luan's face was gloomy. He didn't expect that Xie Chang would be so spineless and confess so quickly. Shi Han's gaze was icy cold, and he paid no attention to Xie Chang who was kowtowing and admitting his mistake, and his gaze descended onto Shi Luan instead. Shi Luan, what else do you have to say? Shi Han asked coldly. Shi Luan sighed lightly and said, I have nothing to say. As soon as Shi Luan finished speaking, he lightly flicked the finger of his right hand, and Xie Chang, who was originally kowtowing and admitting his mistake on the ground, suddenly became extremely red, and his body rapidly expanded. Not good. It's self-detonation. Retreat quickly. Shi Han's expression completely changed the moment he saw Xie Chang's abnormal state. With a wave of his sleeve, a surge of divine power enveloped Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong, and he rushed to the roof without hesitation. Zhuowen's expression also changed slightly. Countless purple-gold divine swords hovered around his body like an impenetrable barrier that enveloped him completely. Rumble. The moment Zhuowen released the purple-gold divine swords to protect himself and retreated, Xie Chang's body expanded to the limit and then directly exploded. Countless blood mist rapidly spread out in all directions like waves, and everything in the room was annihilated into nothingness wherever it passed. The moment Zhuowen completely retreated from the attic, he was completely engulfed by the terrifying explosion of blood mist. The higher-ups of the Hong Rose gang, who were originally waiting outside the attic, felt the terrifying fluctuations in advance and fled in all directions, luckily avoiding the terrifying explosion. What happened in the attic? Could it be that the young man and Lord Shi Luan are fighting again? This energy is not right. It seems to be the energy of self-detonation. Someone self-detonated? What? Then who is it? He actually chose to self-detonate. The higher-ups of the Hong Rose gang discussed animatedly. Their eyes were filled with fear as they looked at the attic that had completely turned into ruins and the blood mist that was constantly spreading in all directions. They all retreated again and again. The blood mist did not spread very far before gradually dissipating. A third of the entire mansion had turned into ruins. Many servants and maids who did not manage to escape in time were killed by the terrifying explosion. Only some of the more powerful ones were able to detect the danger in advance and avoid the disaster. In the ruins, Shi Han broke out of the ground with a dusty face. Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong were by his side. At this moment, the three of them were so frightened that their faces were pale, and their bodies were still trembling. Gang leader. Many of the Hong Rose gang's members who were surrounding them were pleasantly surprised when they saw Shi Han. They knelt down on one knee to show their respect. Chapter 4754. Shi Han's face was terrifyingly gloomy. He didn't expect Shi Luan to still have a trick up his sleeve. Have you seen Shi Luan? Shi Han looked around, his eyes cold. Flames of anger rose in his heart. Shi Luan had first colluded with physician Xie to poison him, and now he had fled. If he hadn't recovered from his injuries, he would have killed Shi Luan when he woke up. Shi Luan should have left. Suddenly, countless rocks flew out from another part of the ruins, and a figure walked out. Shi Han and the others turned around and saw that the figure was none other than Juan. Shi Han didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly cupped his hands at Juan and said, "Shuo Xiaoyu, thank you for saving my life this time. Shi Han will never forget this kindness." Juan waved his hand and said, "Don't be so polite, Gang Master Shi Han. I'm friends with Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong. When a friend is in trouble, I naturally have to help. Gang Master Shi Han better be careful of Shi Luan. You haven't recovered from your injuries, so be careful in case Shi Luan makes a comeback." Shi Han nodded cautiously. His expression wasn't good just now because he was afraid that Shi Luan would sneak attack him. After all, his injuries were still very serious, and it would take some time for him to recover. During this period, there weren't many people in the Hongqiang gang who could stop Shi Luan. Gang Master Shi Han. If there's nothing else, this one will take his leave. Yuan cupped his hands and said goodbye. Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong's expressions changed slightly. They quickly urged Juan to stay and said that they wanted to repay Juan's life-saving grace. Although Juan had such intentions in his heart, after all, he had no place to go. He knew that he had to put on a good show. Otherwise, it would be easy to arouse suspicion. "Little friend Jun, Shi Chang and the others are right, please stay. You've helped us so much, we can't be ungrateful." Shi Han looked at Juan with a smile and tried to persuade him to stay. He thought of Juan's powerful strength, and secretly thought that if Juan was in Hong Rose gang, even if Shi Luan dared to come for revenge, he would not be afraid. Moreover, he could tell that Juan really did want to leave just now. It was obvious that the latter really did not have any other intentions towards the Great Rose gang. That was why he let down his guard and finally asked him to stay. After repeatedly persuading Shi Han, Shi Chang, and the others, Juan finally agreed to stay reluctantly. Shi Han heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Juan agree to stay, and she revealed a relaxed smile. On the other hand, Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong were filled with excitement. "Chang, go and arrange a room for Zhuo Xiaoyu. Also, introduce us, the Shi Chang gang." Shi Han looked at Shi Chang and instructed. Shi Chang happily left with Juan. After Shi Chang and Juan left, Shi Han's gaze became serious. He looked at Yang Zue and Yu Hong and said, "The two of you, tell me in detail what happened when you met Zhuo Xiaoyu." Yang Zue and Yu Hong looked at each other, but they did not dare to disobey Shi Han's words. They began to narrate what happened in the 100 Beasts forest. After listening to them, Shi Han fell into deep thought and did not speak for a long time. "Gang Master, is there a problem with Big Brother Zhuo? It shouldn't be, right? After all, he has helped us so much." Yang Zue hurriedly said. Yu Hong nodded repeatedly. Juan had helped them so many times that they had absolute trust in Juan. "It's not a problem, I just find it strange. He hasn't known you for long, but he has helped you so much. No matter how kind a stranger is, it's impossible for him to do this." Shi Han rubbed his chin and spoke his mind. Yang Zhua and Yu Hong heaved a sigh of relief. Yang Zhua said, "Everyone is different. Big brother Zhua might be a kind person. At least, I didn't sense any malice from him." Shi Han nodded. Yang Zhua was right. Zhuan did not have any malice. This was also the reason why he was willing to persuade Zhuan to stay. Immediately send people to repair this area. Also, go to Yinyang City and invite another doctor here. Shi Han looked at the members of the Hongqiang gang and left after giving his orders. Big brother Zhua, this will be your residence from now on. This courtyard is one of the 5 best in the Hongqiang gang. It is specially used to entertain the most important guests. Shiqiang led Zhua Wen to a courtyard that occupied a vast area. There were 2 pavilions that were connected together within the courtyard. There were artificial mountains, pavilions, pools, green grass, and so on and so forth within the courtyard. The environment was quiet and elegant. Within the pavilion, there were rows of servants that were kneeling at the entrance to welcome the arrival of Zhuo Wen and Shiqiang. He's Zhuowen, an important guest of our Hongqiang gang. All of you can serve him well. I won't forgive all of you if you neglect him. Shiqiang walked over to the group of servants, and her voice became stern. She was deeply afraid that these servants would do something wrong and cause Zhuan to be displeased. Zhuan said indifferently, "Miss Shiqiang, I don't need servants. I have a free nature, and I'm used to being alone. I'm not used to being served by others. Ask them to leave." Shiqiang was stunned when she heard this, but she didn't say anything. She waved her hand and asked the servants to leave. After that, Shiqiang chatted with Zhuan for a while longer before she wisely bid her farewells and left. After Shiqiang left, Zhuan stepped into the loft. The space within the loft was extremely large, and it was divided into 2 floors. Every floor was decorated in a classical, elegant, and ancient style. Zhuowen chose a room at random. After setting up layers of array formations and restrictions around the room, he took out a beast core from the outside world. This beast core wasn't large and was around the size of half a palm. Its appearance was hexagonal, crystalline, and translucent. It was smooth and flawless like unpolished jade, and it even emitted waves of fluorescent light. At the core of this hexagonal crystal was a ball of threads that emitted golden light. It was precisely the beast core of the beast that Zhuan had killed in the damp swamp all those years ago. This beast's strength was ordinary, yet its soul had attained the terrifying stage of the Tao art without beginning. I hope this beast core doesn't disappoint me and helps my soul advance a step further. Zhuan muttered to himself. His soul had already attained the peak stage of the heaven art Tao, and it only needed a step further to attain the stage of the Tao art without beginning. So long as he completely absorbed the soul energy within this beast core, he had the premonition that his soul would be able to completely break through the shackles of his soul. Zhuan stopped letting his thoughts run wild. He grabbed the beast core with his right hand and started to madly absorb the surging energy within the beast core. Time gradually flowed by. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. During these 3 days, Zhuan had basically remained in closed-door cultivation and madly absorbed the energy within the beast core. Finally, on this day, the beast core in Zhuowen's palm shattered into countless pieces. At this instant, Zhuan suddenly opened his eyes, and a strand of blazing divine radiance flashed in the depths of his eyes, causing it to be difficult to look at. On the other hand, a blazing and dazzling violet gold light flickered between his brows, and it was like a sun that illuminated the world and dyed the entire loft a violet gold color. A terrifying aura swept out towards the surroundings like tidewater. Chapter 4755. On the main street of Yin and Yang City, there was an endless stream of people coming and going. Suddenly, a terrifying tremor came from the ground, followed by the deafening sound of horse hooves, as if countless war horses were galloping over. At the end of the street, a group of elite cavalrymen was marching towards them like an unstoppable dragon. On the street, countless people raised their heads and looked at the cavalry with fear. They retreated to the sides and took the initiative to open a path. It's the Meng army! On both sides of the street, numerous gazes gathered on the cavalry that was quickly approaching. After seeing the large flag hanging on the cavalry, everyone recognized the origin of this cavalry. The large flag erected in the middle of the cavalry was engraved with the word Meng. It was the cavalry of the Meng family, one of the major forces of Yin and Yang City. In front of the Meng army, a middle-aged man in heavy armor with an imposing aura was quickly leading the Meng army through the street. In the end, the Meng army stopped in front of the Grand Rose Gang's mansion. The middle-aged man in heavy armor looked directly at the closed door of the Grand Rose Gang with a pair of sharp eyes, and a sharp and blazing cold light burst out from the depths of his eyes. "Shi Luan, is what you said true? Has the fire poison in your gang leader been cured?" The middle-aged man withdrew his gaze and looked at a middle-aged man with a goatee beside him and asked indifferently. This middle-aged man with a goatee was none other than Shi Luan, who had escaped with the help of Xie Chang's self-explosion a few days ago. "Patriarch Meng, this is absolutely true. Our gang leader is still seriously injured and has not recovered. This is the best time to attack the Grand Rose Gang. Otherwise, when Shihan recovers, it won't be so easy." Shi Luan came to the side of the heavily armored man and cupped his hands. The heavily armored man was called Meng Yi, and he was the current patriarch of the Meng family in Yin and Yang City. His strength was on par with Shihan. However, because the Meng family and the Grand Rose Gang had a feud, the two major forces often collided with each other. Both sides wanted to overthrow the other and annex it. However, the two major forces were almost the same. Therefore, although they often collided for many years, they had never been able to do anything to each other. This time, Meng Yi got Shi Luan's support and learned that the Grand Rose Gang's gang leader had been suffering from the fire poison and almost died because of it. "Shilan, your Hongqiang gang is pretty good at keeping the news under wraps. I only found out about Shihan's fire poison now. Do you want to borrow the power of my Meng family to get rid of Shihan? Then, you will receive the help of the Great Rose Gang, right?" Meng Yi glanced at Shi Luan and sneered. He could tell at a glance what Shi Luan was planning. The Meng family's patriarch's eyes are like torches. Nothing can escape your eyes. Just as you said, I was indeed planning to do so. But since the Meng family's patriarch is willing to send troops over, it shows that our goal is the same. Shi Luan said calmly. "Underground." Meng Yi grinned and said, "Shilan, you're already a stray dog, and you still want to work with me on equal terms? Aren't you overestimating yourself?" Shi Luan's face changed slightly and he said solemnly, "Family head Meng, I've already told you such important information. Are you going to go back on your word?" Meng Yi said calmly, "I wouldn't go so far as to go back on my word. I promised you that after killing Shihan, I would support you to become the leader of the Great Rose Gang. But the Great Rose Gang must become my Meng family's subsidiary in the future, an obedient dog. If you can do it, I'll support you. If you can't, there are plenty of people willing to be supported by me." Shi Luan's expression changed completely. He did not expect that Meng Yi actually had such an idea. This was to make the Great Rose Gang thoroughly be used by their Meng family. But he also understood that Meng Yi's condition. He had to agree even if he did not want to. Now, he already became a stray dog with nowhere to stay. After Shihan completely recovered, he would definitely be wanted vigorously. At that time, he might not even be able to stay in Liangyi City. And the other cities on the giant island did not welcome outsiders. If he was expelled from Liangyi City, he could only live in the 100 Beasts Forest, with exotic beasts, and live a life of fear and trepidation. This was not the result that Shi Luan wanted. Therefore, after escaping from the Great Rose Gang, he threw himself into the Meng family's embrace without hesitation and used the Meng family's power to thoroughly eradicate the Great Rose Gang. Even if he became a dog of the Meng family in the end, he was also willing. Because he had no choice at all. Alright, as long as the Meng family head can support me to become the Great Rose Gang's gang leader, I'll definitely do my best to work for the Meng family in the future. I won't hesitate to go through water and tread on fire." Shi Luan bowed deeply to Meng Yi, his voice full of obedience. The corners of Meng Yi's mouth curled into a smug arc, and he said, "Shi Luan, you're very good. A wise man submits to circumstances. Don't worry, as long as you're obedient enough, I naturally won't treat you unfairly." Finished speaking, Meng Yi's eyes fell on the door in front again, and he said indifferently, Knock on the Great Rose Gang's door. A soldier dismounted and bowed to Meng Yi, then strode to the door and knocked on the door. After a while, the red lacquer door slowly opened a crack. A servant carefully poked his head out, looking outside the door, and said, "Who are you looking for?" However, as soon as the servant's voice fell, a cold light flashed past. Then, the servant's head fell to the ground, and blood gushed out from the wound. "I'm here to kill." The soldier who knocked on the door held a long saber in his hand, licked his lips, and kicked the red lacquer door open. Clang! The huge red lacquer door couldn't withstand the strength of the soldier and exploded with a loud bang. Countless wood shavings splattered everywhere. Behind the door, the other two servants screamed in fright when they saw the headless body of the servant, and their butts went limp on the ground. A cold light flashed past. The two people who were paralyzed with fear had their heads separated from their bodies. Blood gushed out and splattered all over the ground. "Everyone, kill. Today I want the Great Rose Gang. Those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish. If anyone doesn't obey, then kill. Kill until they obey." Meng Yi pulled out the long saber from his waist and raised it above his head. His voice was like rolling thunder. Suddenly, the cavalry rushed into the depths of the Great Rose Gang like a surging torrent, with the momentum of toppling mountains and overturning seas. "Kill! Kill!" In an instant, nearly 100 cavalry rushed into the mansion like a torrent. Everywhere they passed, they burned, killed, and looted. They did everything they could. Blood completely dyed every corner of the mansion red. Wails, screams, and clamor mixed together. The entire Great Rose Gang mansion seemed to have turned into a massacre hell at this moment. "Shi Luan, come in with me. Since Shi Han has been poisoned by fire and hasn't recovered, his strength is definitely not as good as mine. As long as he dares to come out, I'll kill him." Meng Yi glanced at Shi Luan, who was beside him, laughed, and then rode his horse into the mansion unhurriedly. Shi Luan followed behind, his eyes flickering. He didn't say anything about Juan because he was afraid that if he did, Meng Yi would definitely be afraid and not send troops to the Great Rose Gang. With Meng Yi's strength, he should be able to deal with that young man. Shi Luan thought to himself. Wonderful book house. Chapter 4756. I'll remember it in 1 second. Wonderful. Read it for free. Grand Rose Gang, inside the reception hall. Shi Han sat on the main seat while Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong sat below. At this moment, Shi Han's face was slightly pale. He had just gotten rid of the fire poison, and his internal injuries had yet to fully recover. Therefore, his aura was still rather weak. Little friend Zhuowen hasn't come out of seclusion yet? Shi Han looked at Shi Chang and couldn't help but ask. Shi Chang shook her head and said, "Big brother Zhuo seems to be at a critical juncture of a breakthrough. I went to his residence these past few days and could feel a powerful aura emanating from his room. Therefore, I didn't go in to disturb him." Shi Han nodded and fell silent for a moment before saying, "Shi Chang, Yang Zue, Yu Hong, what do you three think of little friend Juan? What do you think of him?" Yang Zue quickly said, "Gang leader. I think big brother Zhuo is very good, there's nothing bad about him." Shi Chang and Yu Hong also nodded quickly. Ever since Yuan had saved them many times, and their Grand Rose Gang's crisis had been resolved because of him, the three of them had a blind trust in Juan. Little friend Juan is indeed very good, and he has also helped our Grand Rose Gang so much. I actually want to make him the next gang leader. Shi Han slowly said. Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong were stunned at first. Although their eyes were a little dim, they knew that it was Juan and expressed their agreement. I do have this intention, but I still have some doubts. However, I still have some misgivings because Zhuo Wen's origins are a little unclear, so I'm hesitating over this decision. Shi Han sighed. Father, what's there to worry about? Is his background really that important? Shi Luan is my uncle and your big brother. Blood is thicker than water with us, but he harmed you and even tried to kill me for the position of gang leader. In my opinion, his background isn't important at all. What's important is whether or not he has a conscience, whether or not he thinks for our Grand Rose Gang, and whether or not he can lead our Grand Rose Gang to become stronger. She looked at Shi Han and said in a low voice, I feel that Big Brother Zhua is such a reliable and powerful person. If he can become the next leader, the Great Rose Gang will definitely flourish in his hands. I agree with little sister Xiqiang. I agree too. Yang Zhua and Yu Hong stood up and agreed with Xiqiang. Shihan pondered for a moment before he nodded and smiled. Hee. You've convinced me. That's right, background really isn't that important. The most important thing is whether or not this person is truly loyal to our Hong Rose Gang. Then, before Shihan could finish her words, the sandalwood door of the reception hall was suddenly opened, and a figure covered in blood rushed in. Gang leader. Something bad had happened. A group of cavalrymen had barged into the mansion without permission and started a massacre without any explanation. They killed many of our brothers from the Great Rose Gang. The blood-soaked figure's eyes were filled with terror as he cried out weakly. However, just as he finished speaking, an arrow shot out like a bolt of black lightning and instantly pierced through his head. What? Who dares to barge into the Great Rose Gang's mansion and kill people? Shihan turned pale with fright. He didn't think that someone would be so bold as to barge into the Great Rose Gang and start a massacre. Shihan, are you still not going to come out? Suddenly, an indifferent and cold voice came from outside the door of the reception hall. Shihan, Xiqiang, and the others' pupils shrank. They recognized the owner of the voice immediately. Wasn't it Shi Luan? Bang bang bang. Suddenly, the doors of the reception hall were knocked open one by a certain force, and a terrifying gale swept in like an avalanche, blowing the entire hall into a mess, turning it into a mess. Shihan was as steady as Mount Tai as he sat on the main seat. Divine power surged out of his body like a tide and blocked the gust of wind that swept in from outside the door. Xiqiang, Yang Zhua, and Yu Hong hurried to Shihan's side and looked outside the hall. In the open space outside the hall, a group of aggressive cavalry was lined up in rows, blocking the entrance of the hall. At the head of the cavalry was a middle-aged man in heavy armor. He slowly rode forward on a large horse and stared coldly at Shihan with a pair of sharp eyes. What is the meaning of this? Does your Meng family want to start a war with our Great Rose Gang? Shihan sat on the main seat and said in a loud voice. At this moment, Shihan's aura was like a rising sun, emitting a light that was difficult to look at. Meng Yi frowned slightly and couldn't help but look at Shi Luan beside him in confusion. Didn't they say that Shihan's injuries hadn't healed? No matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like he was injured. Patriarch Meng, don't be deceived by Shihan. He's just bluffing. I've seen his injuries with my own eyes. He won't be able to recover in a few days. It'll take at least a few months for him to fully recover. Right now, he is still seriously injured. Shi Luan, who was standing beside Meng Yi, suddenly reminded. Xiqiang, Yang Zhua, and Yu Hong's expressions changed slightly as they looked at Shi Luan angrily. This Shi Luan was too much. No matter what he did in the Great Rose Gang, it was an internal matter. Shi Luan wanted to harm Shi Luan and usurp the throne. Now that he failed, he betrayed the entire Great Rose Gang and joined the Great Rose Gang's sworn enemy, the Meng family. They didn't need to think to know that the reason Meng Yi attacked the Great Rose Gang was because of the information Shihan provided. He said that Shihan was seriously injured and his strength was far from what it was before. Otherwise, with the Meng family's cautiousness, they wouldn't do such a reckless thing. Obviously, even if Meng Yi risked being punished by the city lord's mansion, he wanted to take this opportunity to kill Shihan to prevent future troubles. Gang leader Shihan. Our Meng family and the Great Rose Gang have hundreds of years of feud. Today, I want to settle this feud, so I took the liberty to come here. Meng Yi grinned and continued, as long as you're dead, the feud between our forces will be completely resolved. As he spoke, Meng Yi kicked the horse's belly and urged it to rush towards Shihan in the reception hall. So, please die. Meng Yi pulled out the long spear on his back and stabbed it towards Shihan with a terrifying aura. Shihan's face was gloomy. After he ordered Xiqiang and the others to leave quickly, he stomped his feet and attacked Meng Yi instead of retreating. The moment he rushed out, Shihan took out 2 halberds that were 5 feet long and swung them, fiercely fighting with Shihan. Chapter 4757. Full Text Divine Soul Sovereign's latest chapter. Boom, boom, boom. The entire Hong Rose gang was affected by the terrifying aftermath of the battle, and divine power rushed out in all directions like a tidal wave. Meng Yi and Shi Han were both powerhouses of the Tao of No Beginning. The laws of heaven and earth were in their hands, as if they were their arms. Divine power poured out along with the rolling laws, causing the surrounding space to crack and distort. Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong all retreated to a safe distance. Shi Luan and the Meng army also retreated, looking at the two figures fighting in the sky with fear. The battle between the two powerhouses was too terrifying, and it naturally attracted the attention of many powerhouses in Yin and Yang City. Countless gazes gathered in the Hong Rose gang, and many figures flew up and down, hovering near the Hong Rose gang, silently watching the two figures fighting above the gang. It's the Meng family's patriarch, Meng Yi, and the Hong Rose gang's leader, Shi Han. Has the conflict between these two forces reached the point of life and death? They are actually fighting in the city. The Meng family and the Hong Rose gang have been enemies for generations, and the leaders of the two forces will fight sooner or later. I just didn't expect this battle to come so suddenly. Many powerhouses gathered near the Hong Rose gang's mansion were discussing spiritedly, and their eyes were watching the battle above the Hong Rose gang with great interest. Everyone could see that although Meng Yi and Shi Han were evenly matched, they could keenly sense that Shi Han was gradually at a disadvantage, and his aura was becoming extremely unstable. Puchi. Suddenly, Shi Han and Meng Yi collided, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body retreated, and his face became extremely pale. Shi Luan really didn't lie to me. Gang leader Shi Han, you really are seriously injured. You must be in pain just now. Don't worry, when I kill you, you won't be in pain anymore. Meng Yi laughed when he saw Shi Han vomiting blood and retreating, and continued to rush toward Shi Han with his spear in hand. Countless spear shadows flickered in the void as they swept toward Shi Han with endless laws and divine power. Shi Han wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and raised her halberds to fight Meng Yi again. Unfortunately, Shi Han was already injured. Although he had managed to recover over the past few days, his vitality was still far from fully recovered. Now that Meng Yi had seized the opportunity to attack him, his old injuries began to erupt. After that, Shi Han was basically suppressed by Meng Yi, and he kept coughing up blood. The situation became precarious. Shi Han is injured. No wonder Meng Yi rushed to Hong Chang gang. So that's the reason. Meng Yi has always wanted to kill Shi Han and destroy the Hong Chang gang. In the past, Shi Han was there, so he didn't have the chance. Now that Shi Han has yet to recover from his injuries, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him. Many of the experts present narrowed their eyes as they saw that Shi Han was injured. They also guessed the reason why Meng Yi attacked the Hong Rose gang. Many experts sighed in their hearts. Shi Han's condition was too poor. He wouldn't be able to last long against Meng Yi. He would most likely be killed by the former. Once Shi Han died, the Great Rose gang would be finished. Father. Gang leader. Shi Chang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong looked at the battle in the sky with worried eyes. How could they not see that Shi Han was forcing himself to fight Meng Yi? Bang! Suddenly, a figure fell from the sky in a sorry state, smashing into Zhuo Wen's residence. Rumble! The huge pavilion and courtyard collapsed and turned into ruins. That's Big Brother Zhuo's residence. Not good. Shi Chang's expression changed drastically. She tapped her feet lightly and rushed toward the courtyard where Shi Han had fallen. Yang Zue and Yu Hong quickly followed behind. They knew that Zhuan had been in seclusion all this time. If he was disturbed at a critical moment, it would be easy for him to go berserk. He might even be seriously injured by the backlash. Shi Han, go to hell. However, before Shi Chang and the other two reached the courtyard ruins, Meng Yi's body suddenly sank like a falling meteor and fell heavily into the courtyard ruins below. Rumble! Meng Yi fell like a meteor and crashed heavily into the courtyard ruins. The entire courtyard collapsed and formed a huge pit. A terrifying wave of air swept out in all directions with an aura that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Shi Chang and the other two were hit by the wave of air before they could reach it. They grunted and spat out blood as they were sent flying. We're really lucky. I didn't expect that courtyard to be Zhuowen's place of seclusion. Hehe, we've caught them all in one fell swoop. Shi Luan stood silently in the outer courtyard and looked at the huge pit in the distance with a complacent smile on his face. He had heard Shi Chang's words clearly just now. He wasn't unfamiliar with the name Zhuon. It was the young man who had injured him earlier. Scram. Suddenly, a thunderous voice came from the huge pit. At the same time, a terrifying aura shot into the sky and instantly spread throughout the Great Rose Gang's residence. A huge violet gold sword that was over 300 meters long shot into the sky. At the tip of the violet gold sword, a figure holding a spear was retreating in a sorry state. Bang! The violet gold sword seemed to be alive as it slashed horizontally in the air and heavily slashed the figure, causing the figure to fly out and land on the ground. He barely managed to stabilize himself. That's the Meng family's patriarch, Meng Yi? Everyone's eyes turned and landed on the pike-wielding figure, and their hearts trembled. This figure was none other than the Meng family's patriarch, Meng Yi. At this moment, Meng Yi held the spear in his right hand and stabbed it into the ground to stop himself from retreating. His cold eyes first landed on the violet gold sword in the sky before finally landing on the huge pit in front of him. Two figures slowly walked out of the huge pit. The one in the lead was a rather handsome young man, and the one following behind him was Shi Luan, who was in a sorry state. At this moment, the young man's aura was surging, and a dazzling violet gold light flickered between his eyebrows. His entire body emitted a terrifying aura that made one's heart palpitate. Who are you? Meng Yi looked at the young man in front of him with fear. Although the young man's aura seemed to be around the level of the heavenly law path, he could feel a very dangerous aura from him. Especially the violet gold sword in the sky. Not only did it push him back, but it also injured him quite badly. Moreover, this injury was targeted at his divine soul. You don't even know who I am, and you rushed into the Great Rose Gang just like that? Zhuon looked up at Meng Yi and then saw Shi Luan not far away. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Didn't Shi Luan tell you?" Meng Yi's pupils shrank as he turned to look coldly at Shi Luan, cursing the latter in his heart. The Great Rose Gang actually had such a powerhouse, and Shi Luan didn't tell him at all. Damn it. Shi Luan's face was pale. He naturally felt the killing intent in Meng Yi's eyes and was completely flustered. Chapter 4758. My friend, I don't think you're from the Great Rose Gang, right? Today, my Meng family and the Great Rose Gang are here to settle old scores. This has nothing to do with you, so please leave. Meng Yi cupped his hands toward Zhuon and said politely. Just now, he had completely recognized Zhuon's strength. He knew that even if he used all his skills, he might not be able to defeat this person. Shi Han couldn't help but look at Zhuon with a dignified expression. He didn't know what Zhuon would choose. Offending a big force like the Meng family in Yin and Yang City for the Great Rose Gang was actually a very bad deal. After all, their Great Rose Gang hadn't done anything for Zhuon. On the contrary, they had received a lot of favors from Zhuon. Logically speaking, Yun really had no obligation to stand up for their Great Rose Gang. What if I don't leave? Zhuon said indifferently. Meng Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, and his heart gradually sank. Zhuon had chosen the option he didn't want to see the most. Or do you want to kill me too? Zhuon took a step forward, and a terrifying divine soul power burst out without holding back. In an instant, the entire Great Rose Gang was drowned in a tidal wave of divine soul power. Many cultivators felt this terrifying divine soul power, and their faces changed greatly. It's actually the divine soul power of the Tao of no beginning. And this divine soul power can actually affect me. It's even stronger than the ordinary cultivators of no beginning. This person's cultivation is around the Tao of heaven, but his divine soul actually has the Tao of no beginning. I'm afraid he also has a powerful divine soul attack secret technique. This guy is very scary. I can't provoke him casually. When Zhuon's divine soul power was completely revealed, many cultivators present were shocked. Although Meng Yi and Shi Han were also at the Tao of No Beginning, they were also very afraid of Zhuan. This was because cultivators who cultivated the soul were much more terrifying than those who cultivated the physical body. Powerful soul techniques could silently erase the opponent's soul without them noticing. Whether it was Meng Yi, Shi Han, or the other cultivators of the Tao of No Beginning, although their souls were not weak, they had never cultivated soul arts. Because this cultivation method was too rare, there was no such cultivation method in the entire Yin-Yang city. Therefore, they were most afraid of encountering cultivators who cultivated soul techniques. Now, Zhuowen was such an expert who cultivated in the art of the soul. How could they not be afraid of him? Meng Yi's eyes slowly narrowed as his heart sank. He didn't expect Zhuowen to stand up for the Great Rose Gang in the end. This was the worst possible outcome for him. Zhuowen took another step forward, and a terrifying spiritual energy surged out once again. Above his head, a second spiritual energy sword intent condensed, and a terrifying pressure came crashing down like a tidal wave. At the instant he condensed the second one, Zhuowen condensed the third, the fourth. Meng Yi's pupils constricted to the size of needles, and his heart trembled as he looked at Zhuowen with a gaze full of fear. How could he not see that Zhun was pressuring him and showing his determination at the same time? Now that the Great Rose Gang had two Tao of No Beginning experts, although Shi Han was seriously injured, Zhun could take on two of them. How could Meng Yi dare to continue targeting the Great Rose Gang? Let's go! Meng Yi was very sullen. He carried his spear and turned around to leave the Great Rose Gang with the Meng army. This time he was really unlucky. He thought that it was the best time to destroy Shi Han and the Great Rose Gang, but he didn't expect to return in disappointment. Patriarch Meng. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, you can't just leave like this. Seeing that Meng Yi was really going to turn around and leave, Shi Luan hurriedly followed and earnestly persuaded him. All he could rely on now was Meng Yi. If this operation failed, then he would be in a really dangerous situation. Rip. As soon as Shi Luan's voice fell, a cold light swept over and his right arm was directly thrown into the air, blood splattering everywhere. Ah! Shi Luan screamed miserably as he clutched his broken arm and retreated a few steps, looking at Meng Yi in horror. Patriarch Meng. Shi Luan turned pale with fright, not knowing why Meng Yi attacked him. Meng Yi suddenly threw out his spear, sending Shi Luan flying and crashing heavily to the ground. Shi Luan, isn't it because of you that things have developed to this point? You've been hiding this person's existence from me and now you're asking me why I can't just leave like this. Are you using me and the Meng family as spears? Do you think I'm an idiot? If you dare to say another word, this spear will pierce your head. Meng Yi's eyes were cold and ruthless as he coldly threw down these words and looked straight at Shi Luan. Shi Luan trembled in fear and quickly lowered his head, not daring to look at Meng Yi. Patriarch Shi Han. I'm really sorry for taking the liberty to come here. The reason why our Meng family trespassed into the Great Rose Gang was mostly because of this Shi Luan. Our Meng family is also a victim. Meng Yi glanced at Shi Han indifferently, then his gaze fell on Zhuan. He cupped his hands towards the latter and led the Meng family army away in a hurry. Shi Han's face was extremely ugly. This Meng Yi was really rude. If it wasn't for Meng Yi wanting to destroy the Great Rose Gang, even if Shi Luan said 1,000 times, he wouldn't have been persuaded to mobilize the Meng family army. Now, this Meng Yi was actually so despicable as to push all the blame onto Shi Luan. But Shi Han also understood that now was not the time to pursue Meng Yi. After all, the Meng family was now very powerful and their Great Rose Gang was gradually declining. With the Great Rose Gang's current situation, they really didn't dare to directly challenge the Meng family. Zhuowen stood in place with a contemplative look. Speaking of which, he didn't want to stand up for the Great Rose Gang. After all, he and the Great Rose Gang were unrelated. However, he also understood that if he wanted to have a place to stay in Yin and Yang City, the Great Rose Gang was the most suitable. Moreover, that Meng Yi really did disturb his cultivation. How could Zhuowen just tolerate it? Patriarch, Shi Luan knows his wrongs. Please spare my life. Shi Luan suddenly rushed in front of Shi Han. He knelt on the ground and repeatedly kowtowed to Shihan to admit his wrongs. At the same time, he also kowtowed to Zhuowen, begging Zhuowen to intercede for him. The evils you brought upon yourself are the hardest to bear. After saying this, Zhuowen didn't even look at Shi Luan. Shi Luan was a high-ranking member of the Great Rose Gang, but for the position of patriarch, he plotted to kill Shihan. Later, his plot was exposed and he even sought refuge with the Meng family, the Great Rose Gang's sworn enemy, wanting to lead the Meng family to destroy the Great Rose Gang. Such a despicable and hateful person was not worthy of being forgiven. Since Patriarch Zhuowen said so, then take your own life. Save me the trouble of doing it myself. Shihan looked down at Shi Luan coldly and said indifferently. Shi Luan's actions had indeed disappointed Shihan. He didn't want to give him even the slightest chance. What? Shi Luan's expression changed greatly. But before he could finish his words, he was intimidated by Zhuowen's terrifying aura. If you dare to say another word, I'll immediately kill you. Take your own life. Zhuowen said indifferently. Chapter 4759. Shi Luan smiled dejectedly. The moment Shihan and Zhuowen locked onto him, he knew he had no other choice. Gang leader. I'm sorry. I've let you down. If I'm not here in the future, please take care of yourself. Shi Luan bowed deeply to Shihan, then to Shichang. Shichang, it's all Uncle's fault. If I'm not here, please don't resent Uncle. Shichang looked at Shi Luan with complicated eyes and sighed softly. Uncle, if you knew this would happen, why did you do it? Before Shichang could finish, a sharp sound of something tearing through the air swept over. Then, she was shocked to see Shi Luan pouncing towards her with a ferocious expression. Shi Luan, don't you dare! Shihan's expression changed drastically as he rushed towards Shichang. However, he was too far away from Shichang. At this moment, Shi Luan was already within reach of Shichang. Ha! What a foolish Shihan! You didn't expect me to attack Shichang. As long as I capture Shichang and take her hostage, your magnificent Rose Gang won't dare to do anything to me. Shi Luan thought to himself as he sped up. Divine energy erupted from his body and lingered around him like clouds. The moment his right hand grabbed Shichang's shoulder, the smile on his face froze completely. A suffocating purplish gold energy suddenly surged out of Shichang's body. This purplish gold energy shot out like an arrow from a bow and manifested into a purplish gold divine sword that instantly pierced Shi Luan's forehead. When did you? Shi Luan's body stiffened as he froze on the spot and stared at Zhuowen, who was not far away. Shi Luan, with your despicable, shameless, and selfish personality, you definitely wouldn't kill yourself like this. You would definitely struggle. So, the moment you knelt down, I set up a trap on Shichang's body. Zhuowen said indifferently. Shi Luan smiled, but it was a very sad smile. Then, his aura gradually faded, and he finally lay on the ground, completely dead. Big Brother Zhuo, thank you for saving me once again. Shichiang hurriedly ran over to Zhuowen, and her face was filled with lingering fear. It's nothing. Zhuowen smiled. Shihan led Yang Zhuo Yuhong and the other higher-ups of the Red Rose Gang to Zhuowen and bowed to express their gratitude. This time, Shihan was truly grateful from the bottom of his heart. If it weren't for Zhuowen, he and the Great Rose Gang would have been finished. Next, Shihan organized the servants to repair the damaged mansion and invited Zhuowen into the reception hall. Many of the spectating experts left one after another. However, they remembered Zhuowen. This person actually practiced the art of the spirit, and he was in the state of no beginning. To most of the experts in Yin and Yang City, he was a figure that could not be provoked. In the reception hall, Shihan respectfully invited Zhuowen to take a seat while he sat beside Zhuowen. Shichang, Yang Zhuo, and Yu Hong obediently sat at the head of the table. Gang leader, you said you have something important to discuss with me. What is it? Zhuowen asked doubtfully. Shihan pondered for a moment and asked, Shuo Shao, what do you think of my Red Rose Gang? Zhuowen was startled. Although he did not understand why Shihan asked this, he still nodded and answered, I think the Red Rose Gang is very good. Whether it is the gang members or the atmosphere, I quite like it. Hearing this, Shihan breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "That's good." After pausing for a moment, Shihan continued, "Shua Xiaoyu, I actually want to appoint you as the next gang leader of the Red Rose Gang. I think with your talent and strength, you are enough to bring glory to the Red Rose Gang." After saying this, Shihan looked at Zhuowen expectantly, but he was slightly nervous in his heart. Shi Chang, Yang Zhua, and Yu Hong also looked at Zhuowen expectantly. Zhuowen was stunned. He did not expect that Shihan actually intended to leave the position of the next gang leader to him. This surprised him. After all, even if he was indebted to the Red Rose Gang, he was still an outsider in the end. What qualifications did he have to be the gang leader? Moreover, Zhuowen followed Shichang 3 people into the Red Rose Gang this time, mainly to understand the Divine Mountain Range. He did not plan to stay in Yinyang City for long. Gang leader Shihan, I appreciate your good intentions, but I can't accept it. Zhuowen shook his head and rejected decisively. Shihan was stunned. Shichang, Yang Zhua, and the rest were also stunned. They did not expect that Zhuowen would actually reject the position of the Red Rose Gang's gang leader just like this. Did he not know what the Red Rose Gang's gang leader meant? It meant power, benefits, and status. As long as he became the Red Rose Gang's gang leader, Zhuowen would immediately become one of the top people in Yinyang City in a short time. However, Zhuowen rejected it without hesitation. This was too inconceivable. "Zhua Xiaoyu, are you really not going to consider it?" Shihan asked, unwilling to give up. Zhuowen shook his head resolutely and said, "Gang leader Shihan, I've already made up my mind. It's useless for you to persuade me. Moreover, I think that Shichang, Yang Zhua, and Yu Hong are very suitable for the position of gang leader." Shihan sighed softly. He could see that Zhuowen was not being polite. He really did not want to inherit the position of gang leader. Although Shihan was a little disappointed, he felt more and more respect for Zhuowen in his heart. He was full of admiration for him. In Yinyang City, not many people could resist the temptation of becoming a member of the Red Rose Gang. However, Zhuowen had resisted it. In Shihan's opinion, this was really amazing. Gang leader Shihan, actually, I also have some questions to ask you. I hope you can answer me in detail. Zhuowen's gaze was serious as he said in a low voice. When Shihan saw that Zhuowen was so serious, he also became serious and said in a low voice, "Shua Xiaoyu, ask away. As long as it's something I know, I'll definitely tell you everything." Zhuowen pondered for a moment and said, "Gang leader Shihan, there's a sacred mountain on this giant island. Can you tell me about it in detail?" Shihan's face sank when he heard this. He looked deeply at Zhuowen but did not say anything. Shichang, Yang Zhua, and Yu Hong also frowned and looked at Zhuowen with complicated gazes. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Zhuowen asked with a frown. Shihan sighed softly and said, "Shua Xiaoyu, you're not from Yinyang City, right? In fact, you're not even from this giant island." Zhuowen's pupils shrank slightly. He did not expect Shihan to expose him so easily. "But how did you know?" Zhuowen did not continue to hide it. Shihan said indifferently, "All kinds of rumors about the sacred mountain have been passed down from generation to generation on this giant island. As long as you're a native of this giant island, it's impossible for you not to know about the sacred mountain. But you don't seem to know anything about it." Hearing this, Zhuowen finally understood why Shihan guessed that he was not a native of this giant island at a glance. It turned out that his question had exposed him. Zhuowen thought of Yinyang City's hostility toward outsiders and sighed softly. Shihan would not tell him anything about the sacred mountain after knowing that his identity had been exposed. "Sorry for the disturbance. Farewell." Zhuowen stood up, cupped his hands in salute, and walked out of the reception hall. "Wait, Zhua Xiaoyu, I'm willing to tell you about the sacred mountain. Our Hongqiang gang is also willing to accept you and help you." Shihan's voice suddenly rang out in the hall, causing Zhuowen to stop in his tracks. Chapter 4760. Zhuowen turned around and looked deeply at Shihan. His eyes flickered with complicated emotions. Shihan hurriedly walked out and pulled Zhuowen back into the hall. "Zhua Xiaoyu, actually, After you brought Shiqiang and the others back, I heard about you from them. I also had some guesses about you. I thought you were from another city, but I didn't expect you to not be from this island." Shihan asked Zhuowen to return to his seat and sighed softly. Zhuowen looked at Shihan silently and said in a low voice, "Since Gang Master has already guessed it, why do you still want to make me the next Gang Master? After all, I am an outsider." Shihan sighed. "In the Great Rose Gang, the closest person to me is Shi Luan. He is my big brother, and blood is thicker than water. But what did he do? Zhuo Xiaoyu, although you are an outsider, you have saved the Great Rose Gang time and time again. At that moment, I knew that it didn't matter whether you were an outsider or not. As long as this person is truly considerate of the Great Rose Gang, he is the most suitable candidate." Shi Han said helplessly. "Unfortunately, Zhuo Xiaoyu didn't accept the position of the Great Rose Gang's leader. This makes me very vexed. But I won't force you." One sat in his seat and didn't say a word. He didn't know what to say. He couldn't say that he wasn't from this world and came from the outside, right? If he said that, Shihan wouldn't take him in no matter how bold he was, let alone talk about the Divine Mountain. "Father, since Brother Zhuo doesn't want to accept the position, you don't have to force him," Shichang said when she heard Shihan mention the position of the leader again. Shihan realized that he had misspoken and apologized to Zhuan. Then he said seriously, "Zhuo Xiaoyu, the Divine Mountain isn't a secret on our island. Basically, everyone on the island knows about it. It's like this." With Shihan's explanation, Zhuan gradually understood the origin of the Divine Mountain and the giant island. In this world, the most vast and boundless place was the Blood Sea that stretched as far as the eye could see. The Blood Sea ran through the entire secret realm, and in the depths of the Blood Sea lived countless terrifying and powerful creatures. These creatures were extremely violent and aggressive. Many of the humans living on the islands in the Blood Sea were often attacked by the creatures in the Blood Sea and were dragged into the Blood Sea to be eaten. The humans were too weak. For countless years, they lived on the edge. Because of the frequent attacks, the number of humans on the various islands gradually dwindled to the point where they were on the verge of extinction. Later, at the center of the Sea of Blood, endless magma suddenly erupted, forming an incomparably huge divine mountain. And the mountain was so tall that it was impossible to see its peak. After the divine mountain was formed, countless streams of lava began to surround the divine mountain, forming a giant island. What was even more strange was that the divine mountain exuded an extremely powerful energy. This energy was like a shield that covered the giant island, forming a shield that was as solid as a rock. This powerful and strange shield was completely unobstructed to the human race, but to the monsters in the Blood Sea, it caused substantial damage. Many of the monsters that tried to break into the giant island were blasted into pieces by the power of the divine mountain. Later, after the monsters in the Blood Sea learned their lesson, they no longer dared to try to enter the divine mountain's giant island. Instead, they only dared to silently swim around the periphery. On the other hand, the humans swarmed into the giant island from the many scattered small islands in the surroundings and built cities on the giant island. With the protection of the divine mountain, the humans gradually prospered on the giant island. They became stronger and stronger, and they were no longer afraid of the monsters in the Blood Sea. Some human cultivators even formed teams to hunt down the monsters in the Blood Sea to avenge the blood of their ancestors. Of course, the human cultivators living on the giant island would offer large amounts of treasures, ingredients, and live sacrifices to the divine mountain every year, hoping that the divine mountain would continue to protect them. Live sacrifices? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and couldn't help but raise his voice. Shihan smiled bitterly. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, looks like you've thought of something. The live sacrifices are young boys and girls that must be offered to the divine mountain every year. Do you know what happens to those young boys and girls after they enter the divine mountain?" Zhuowen asked. Shihan shook her head. "I'm not sure about that, because the young boys and girls that are offered to the divine mountain every year seem to have mysteriously disappeared and never appeared again." Hearing this, Zhuowen revealed a thoughtful expression and continued, "Then when is the next sacrificial offering on the divine mountain?" Shihan was stunned, but she still answered, "In about 8 months. It will be the annual Divine Mountain Sacrifice ceremony." "I see." Zhuan nodded. He had an idea. The best way to enter the Divine Mountain without being noticed was to sneak into the Divine Mountain during the Divine Mountain Sacrifice ceremony. However, the next Divine Mountain Sacrifice ceremony would take about 8 months. It was a little too long for Zhuan. "All right, sect leader Shihan. Other than the Divine Mountain Sacrifice ceremony, has anyone climbed the Divine Mountain before?" Zhuan suddenly asked. Shihan's eyes narrowed. She looked deeply at Zhuan and said, "Xiaoyu, I advise you not to have such dangerous thoughts. The Divine Mountain is extremely dangerous." Many powerhouses with the Tao of no beginning have entered the Divine Mountain when it was not the time for the Divine Mountain Sacrifice ceremony. But in the end, none of them returned. They must have all died in the Divine Mountain. The Divine Mountain is not something we can profane. If we enter recklessly, it is equivalent to seeking death. Zhuan's eyes narrowed. He didn't expect the Divine Mountain to be so dangerous. So many powerhouses with the Tao of no beginning had died in there. Although Zhuan's strength was not bad, he was only slightly stronger than a powerhouse with the Tao of no beginning. If even a powerhouse with the Tao of no beginning had died in the Divine Mountain, it would be very dangerous for Zhuan to enter. During the Divine Mountain Sacrifice ceremony, the power of the Divine Mountain is at its weakest. Entering the Divine Mountain is the safest. However, there are special requirements for those who can enter the Divine Mountain during the Divine Mountain Sacrifice ceremony. Ordinary people are not allowed to enter. Shihan thought for a moment and said again, "Xiaoyu, I think you want to enter the Divine Mountain. Although I don't know what your goal is, I can help you." Zhuan raised his head. He didn't expect Shihan to be willing to help him. If this was discovered, Shihan and the Great Rose Gang would be destroyed. "Sect leader Shihan, you don't even know me, but you are willing to help me enter the Divine Mountain? What if I have bad intentions? Won't you become a sinner?" Zhuan said in surprise. Shihan smiled and said, "I believe you, and I am helping you to repay a debt of gratitude. I, Shihan, don't like to owe people favors." Chapter 4761. Zhuan stood up, cupped his hands at Shihan, and said, "Gang leader Shihan, thank you very much." Shihan waved her hand and said with a smile, "Xiaoyu, you don't have to be so polite. I've said it before, I'm helping you to repay your kindness. There's still about 8 months until the mountain worship ceremony. Do you have any plans during this period of time?" Zhuan pondered for a moment and said in a deep voice, "During this period of time, I'll stay in the Great Rose Gang. I'll do my best to help your Great Rose Gang gain a foothold in Yinyang City and take a step forward." Hearing that, Shihan's face was full of joy. With a great expert like Zhuan overseeing the Great Rose Gang, not only did their Great Rose Gang not fear the Meng family, they would even suppress the Meng family very soon. "Xiaoyu, thank you very much." Shihan stood up and cupped her hands at Zhuan gratefully. Shichang, Yangzhua, and Yuhong all revealed smiles. They were very clear about Zhuan's strength. They knew that with Zhuan joining the Great Rose Gang, it could be said to be sending charcoal in snowy weather to the Great Rose Gang. After all, this time, because of Shi Luan's betrayal and framing, the Great Rose Gang had already fallen into an abyss of suffering. It was like a collapsing building, about to collapse at any time. And Zhuan joining, without a doubt, could completely stabilize the collapsing Great Rose Gang, this edifice that was about to collapse. After both sides reached an agreement, Zhuan thoroughly stayed in the Great Rose Gang. Shihan even let Zhuan take on the position of the Great Rose Gang's deputy gang leader. Although Zhuan repeatedly refused, Shihan kept insisting. In the end, Zhuan could only accept. Henceforth, Zhuan also became the Great Rose Gang's deputy gang leader. This news quickly spread throughout the entire Yinyang City. Back then, the battle at the Great Rose Gang's mansion was watched by many powerhouses in the city. They were all clear about Zhuan's strength. With this person joining the Great Rose Gang, many forces in Yinyang City understood that the following Great Rose Gang was not to be trifled with, let alone easily provoke. Meng family. After the Meng family's patriarch, Meng Yi received the news. He was so angry that he smashed the table on his right. Despicable Shilon. You've really caused me a lot of trouble. Meng Yi said with a gloomy look. Patriarch, what should we do? With the addition of that Zhuan, the Hongqiang gang is bound to rise. Our Meng family can no longer do anything to them. A subordinate knelt in front of him and said in a low voice. Go prepare a generous gift and personally deliver it to the Hongqiang gang. Just say that what happened last time was a misunderstanding. Our Meng family is willing to apologize. Meng Yi's eyes flickered as he said in a deep voice. The subordinate hesitated for a moment, nodded, and turned to leave. In the following period of time, after Zhuan settled down in the Hongqiang gang, he basically lived in seclusion and rarely came out. Most of the time, he was in closed-door cultivation. He didn't have much time left, so he had to speed up his cultivation. He definitely couldn't interfere in the matters of the ancient star system. After all, he was too weak. The only thing he could do now was resist the immeasurable calamity for the 100 Outer Realms. Only by protecting the 100 Outer Realms would he have the energy to care about the ancient star system. I wonder how Chen Shui, father, mother, and Wu Shang are doing now. In the deep attic, Yuan had just opened his eyes from his closed-door cultivation. His eyes seemed to have passed through time and space, falling on the 100 Outer Realms of the chaotic starry sky. At this moment, the longing in his heart seemed to surge out uncontrollably, making him think of the most important people in his mind. But very soon, the primordial stone hidden deep in his sea of consciousness erupted with a mysterious purple light, completely pulling Zhuowen's mind back. Is it a heart demon? Zhuowen's eyes suddenly became much clearer. He narrowed his eyes slightly. At that moment, he seemed to have lost himself in it. Hesitation, helplessness, loneliness, and other negative emotions completely filled his heart. If it weren't for the primordial stone pulling his mind back in time, one was afraid that he would have completely fallen into the heart demon, unable to extricate himself. A heart demon has actually appeared at this time. Looks like I'm not far from breaking through to the Tao of no beginning. Zhuowen's eyes were complicated and difficult to understand. He was very clear that every realm of all techniques to one was extremely dangerous. If he was careless, it was very easy to fall into the heart demon and lose himself. Just now, Zhuowen's heart demon had taken advantage of him because of his deep longing and almost caused him to suffer from qi deviation. At that time, Zhuowen might have been completely finished. Let's not think about this anymore. Right now, I have to break through to an ordinary primordial god as soon as possible. Only then can I return to the chaotic starry sky. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a serious look, then he closed his eyes again and continued to cultivate. In the chaotic starry sky, the 100 Outer Realms. In a pavilion deep in the primordial Heavenly Tao Academy, Master Ji Yuanxing sat cross-legged quietly. His entire body was breathing in and out mysterious and dazzling golden light, making him look like a golden statue. Suddenly, Master Ji Yuanxing raised his brows and looked at the void in front of him. A golden vortex had appeared in the void, and a dazzling golden figure slowly walked out from the depths of the vortex. The moment he saw this figure, Master Ji Yuanxing's solemn face revealed a trace of a peaceful smile. This figure looked very young and had a stalwart figure. In particular, the vertical scar between his eyebrows added a trace of a demonic aura to him. He was Sakyamuni, who had entered the epic secret realm to cultivate. Disciple greets Master. Sakyamuni knelt on one knee before Master Ji Yuanxing with a respectful expression. Master Ji Yuanxing looked down at Sakyamuni and nodded with a gratified smile. Not bad. It looks like you've gained a lot in the epic secret realm during this period of time. You actually broke through to all techniques to one so quickly. What's your cultivation level now? Master Ji Yuanxing kept sizing up Sakyamuni and discovered that he could not completely sense his aura. He only knew that he should have successfully advanced to all techniques to one. Sakyamuni said respectfully, Master, disciples' cultivation has already reached the path of heavenly laws. I'm not far from the path of no beginning. Master Ji Yuanxing was moved when he heard that. He looked deeply at his most beloved disciple before him. He knew that Sakyamuni had not reached all techniques to one before entering the epic secret realm. Now that he had come out of the epic secret realm, his cultivation level had improved so quickly that he had already reached path of heavenly laws. Moreover, he was not far from the path of no beginning. After all, the 9 great saint masters of the Archean Heavenly Tao Academy and the realm lords of superdomains had only reached the path of no beginning. However, Sakyamuni was already extremely close to that level. This meant that he would soon stand among the true peak experts of the 100 domains. What shocked Master Ji Yuanxing the most was that Sakyamuni was too young. As expected of the disciple I chose. Your talent is truly unparalleled in the world. No one can compare to you. You're the true chosen one. You can save the 100 domains from danger. Master Ji Yuanxing laughed loudly. He looked at Sakyamuni with even more kindness and gratification. Chapter 4762. Master, you're too kind. It was all thanks to Master's epic secret realm that I was able to break through so quickly. Otherwise, it would be impossible for me to break through so quickly. Sakyamuni had a smile on the corners of his mouth while a strange glow flickered in the depths of his eyes. Yuanxing nodded. He was naturally clearly aware of the situation within the epic secret realm. The reason Sakyamuni's cultivation had advanced so quickly was entirely because of his terrifying ancestral Tao foundation. As soon as he entered the epic secret realm, he'd started to madly seize everything within the secret realm. No matter if it was cultivators, demon beasts, resources, so long as it was related to energy, Sakyamuni's ancestral Tao foundation could directly devour it and transform it into his own energy. The epical secret realm that the epical Saint Master had managed for countless years had turned into a piece of hell because of Sakra's entry. It had become a useless ruin. Yuanxing noticed all of this, but he didn't think it was inappropriate at all. Instead, he felt that Sakyamuni really was the chosen one of the heavens. He was probably the only person in the entire world who possessed such formidable natural talent and terrifying ancestral Tao foundation like Sakyamuni. This made Yuanxing even more firmly believe that Sakyamuni was the true chosen one of the heavens. Sakyamuni would definitely be able to save the 100 territories from danger in the future, and he'd be sought after by countless living beings. Master, are there any other similar secret realms? I feel like my cultivation speed is still slightly slow. Sakyamuni licked his lips and spoke with a frown on his face. Since he'd been defeated by Zhuoan again, Sakyamuni wasn't as confident as he was in the past. Logically speaking, his cultivation speed was practically unprecedented, but he still felt that it was too slow. He wanted to become strong enough, much stronger than he was now. He wanted to surpass everyone in the 100 territories and become invincible. Only then would he be able to defeat Zhuoan. This is a secret realm for sacred masters. It's a secret realm that every single sacred master of our primeval Heavenly Tao Academy spent countless years to construct. It can be considered as one of the best cultivation grounds in the 100 territories. Yuanxing shook his head and said, "Even I only have one secret realm for sacred masters." Sakyamuni's eyes flickered. Master! In other words, the other sacred masters all have such a miraculous secret realm? Master Yuanxing looked deeply at Sakyamuni and nodded. Indeed, the sacred sovereign's secret realm is the most secret place of every sacred sovereign. They won't easily allow others to enter the secret realm. Master, do you have the chance to enter the secret realms of other sacred experts? Sakyamuni looked at Yuanxing and asked. Master Yuanxing nodded and said, "If I personally go to other sacred experts' abodes as a guest, they will basically bring me into their sacred experts' secret realms to express the importance they place on their guests. However, I can't bring you there. The other sacred masters are prejudiced against you, so..." Sakyamuni grinned and said, "Master, don't worry. This disciple will not swagger in and let you bring him in." What do you mean? Yuanxing looked at Sakyamuni in surprise. Master, after this disciple's cultivation entered the 10,000 techniques return to one, my Tao foundation underwent some kind of mutation, and this mutation can turn this disciple into a state of nothingness. As Sakyamuni spoke, The vertical mark between his brows suddenly burst out with a scarlet light. Immediately after, the blood light enveloped Sakyamuni's entire body like maggots. When the blood light disappeared, Sakyamuni's figure also disappeared. He disappeared? Master Yuanxing looked around and discovered that Sakyamuni's figure had completely disappeared. He used his powerful divine sense to investigate, but he was actually unable to detect it. Suddenly, a tiny speck of dust gently rose into the air and floated in front of Master Yuanxing. Master Yuanxing looked at the dust here, and his pupils constricted into needles. This was because he discovered that the dust here was no different from other dust. However, the dust here floated in front of him on its own. It was motionless, as if it was controlled by some kind of power to hover in the air. "Disciple, it's you?" Master Yuanxing couldn't help but speak softly. A wisp of blood light surged out from the dust, and then a human figure walked out from the depths of the dust and appeared in front of Master Yuanxing. "Master, you have good eyesight. You actually guessed that it was me." Sakyamuni smiled faintly. Master Yuanxing sized up Sakyamuni and shook his head. "If you didn't take the initiative to appear before me, I wouldn't have been able to find you at all. Just now, I almost didn't discover you. You're really amazing. Master, this is the state of nothingness that I spoke of. When I enter the state of nothingness, it's formless and intangible, and I can attach myself to any matter. Even an expert with the Tao of no beginning would be able to detect me." Sakyamuni spoke rather complacently. Master Yuanxing's eyes flickered with light and he smiled. "Disciple, this Tao root of yours is truly terrifying. It actually possesses such an ability. In this way, I just have to bring you into the secret realms of other Saint Masters without anyone noticing." Sakyamuni nodded and spoke with a solemn expression. "Master, even though no one can detect me when I enter the state of nothingness, it's a huge burden on me. If I stay in the state for too long, it's very easy for me to get lost in the chaos of nothingness and be unable to recover my original body in the end. That also means that I'm no different from perishing. Master, please don't stay for too long if you go to another Saint Master's place as a guest." Master Yuanxing nodded solemnly when he heard this, and he said, "Don't worry, disciple. I understand. I just happen to be going to Saint Master Qing Lian's place to discuss some matters today, and I'll casually mention the secret realms. If he's willing to open up the secret realms, then seize the opportunity to enter his secret realms and hide." "Thank you, Master." Sakyamuni cupped his hands towards Master Yuanxing. Master Yuanxing smiled lightly and said, "We're master and disciple, so there's no need to be so courteous. Enter the state of nothingness and attach yourself to my body first." Sakyamuni nodded, and the vertical mark between his brows once again erupted with blazing blood light, enveloping his entire body, and he disappeared on the spot once again. Saint Master Epic Yuan walked out of his cave abode and headed straight for Saint Master Green Lotus cave abode. The 9 Saint Masters' cave residences were considered secret places in the ancient Heavenly Tao Academy, and they were scattered in various treasured lands, so they were extremely far away from each other. When Master Yuanxing arrived at Saint Master Qing Lian's cave, it was already several hours later. Saint Master Qing Lian's cave was located in a vast and boundless pool. Verdant green lotuses grew on this boundless pool, and every green lotus emitted a green light. Master Yuanxing floated above the pool, took out a green token, and lightly tapped it with his right hand. A green light shot out from the green token and directly shot into the pool. Not long after, a huge whirlpool surged out from the center of the pool, and within the whirlpool, a huge green lotus slowly rose, emitting a resplendent radiance. There were 2 figures standing on the green lotus pedestal, one old and one young. The old man wore a purple-gold brocade robe, and his mottled white hair fluttered in the wind. He had a dignified temperament. Beside the old man, there was a young woman. She wore green clothes, and her skin was whiter than snow. She was extremely beautiful. Chapter 4763. Ji Yuan, you're finally here. I've invited you many times before, but you always said that you didn't have time. This time, you finally have time. Saint Master Qing Lian stood on the green lotus with his hands behind his back. His sharp eyes looked at Ji Yuanxing, who was floating in the air. Ah, Qing Lian, you've invited me so many times. If I still refuse, wouldn't I be unable to tell what's good for me? Ji Yuanxing said with a smile. Greetings, Ji Yuanxing. Standing beside Saint Master Qing Lian was a green-clothed Lian Rong. She bowed slightly to Ji Yuanxing and said respectfully. Ji Yuanxing looked at Lian Rong and nodded in praise. Lian Rong's cultivation progress is not bad. She's not far from 10,000 techniques returned to one. Back then, Qing Lian, your foresight was not bad. Saint Master Qing Lian laughed and said, Come in quickly. Come to my secret realm and have a seat. Then I'll respectfully decline. As you wish. Ji Yuanxing nodded and jumped down, landing on the green lotus. The green lotus slowly fell into the depths of the whirlpool. When the green lotus completely disappeared into the whirlpool in the center of the pool gradually disappeared. Below the pool, there was an incomparably huge world. There were green mountains and clear waters, thousands of miles of rivers and mountains, and even jade palaces. It looked like a fairyland. Ji Yuanxing stood silently on the green lotus and looked around the world below the pool. He clicked his tongue in wonder. Qing Lian, your cave abode is really beautiful. I'm afraid that the other Saint Master's cave abodes are far inferior to yours. Saint Master Qing Lian smiled and said, Ji Yuan, you flatter me. That's because your ambitions are not here. Otherwise, your cave abode world would probably far surpass mine. Not long after, the green lotus landed on the top of a huge mountain. On top of it stood a huge and beautiful palace. On the surface of this palace, thousands of rays of light erupted. It was resplendent and magnificent. What surprised the epic Saint Master even more was that there were many servants standing around the palace. They were not humans, but puppets made of lotus roots. These puppets were very lifelike. Their expressions and movements were very flexible, almost no different from real people. When the green lotus landed, the lotus root puppets all knelt on the ground and kowtowed silently, welcoming the arrival of Saint Master Green Lotus and the others. Ji Yuan, please. Saint Master Blue Lotus walked down the green lotus and made an inviting gesture to Master Yuanxing. Master Yuanxing nodded. Under the lead of Saint Master Qing Lian, he stepped into the palace. Lian Rong followed closely behind. As they walked deeper into the palace, the interior of the palace was not as brightly lit as they had imagined. Instead, it was pitch black and deep. After walking for an unknown period of time, Saint Sovereign Blue Lotus stopped. In front of him stood an ordinary paper door. When he opened the paper door, what appeared before the three of them was a quiet and elegant courtyard. In this courtyard, there was a waterfall. Further away from the waterfall, there was a faintly discernible mountain range. That mountain range was hidden in the sea of clouds, giving off a mysterious and ethereal feeling. In the courtyard, there were all kinds of small animals. The chirping of birds and the fragrance of flowers, as well as the cries of cicadas, could be heard continuously, causing one's heart to involuntarily calm down. In the center of the courtyard, there was a pavilion. In the pavilion, there was a sandalwood table. On top of it, there was a brush, ink, paper, an inkstone, a chessboard, a tea set, and so on. Saint Master Green Lotus invited Master Yuanxing into the pavilion, while Lian Rong considerately brewed a pot of tea for the two of them. Green Lotus, I really did not expect that your mystic realm world is actually connected to your cave palace. At first, I did not realize it. Master Yuanxing's eyes passed through the courtyard and landed on the faintly discernible mountain range in the distance as he spoke with deep meaning. The moment he entered the courtyard, he immediately sensed that this courtyard, the mountain range in the distance, and the beautiful world that stretched as far as the eye could not see clearly, gave him a completely different feeling from the cave palace world. He immediately guessed that he had probably been unknowingly brought into Saint Master Green Lotus's mystic realm world. Saint Master Green Lotus picked up a cup of tea and took a sip. He smiled and said, Ji Yuan, in the end you still saw through it. This world is indeed my mystic realm world. Master Yuanxing nodded and chatted with Saint Master Green Lotus for a while. His gaze was solemn as he said, "Green Lotus. You have invited me to discuss matters here many times. What is it?" Saint Master Green Lotus's gaze became solemn as he said, "A few days ago, the Lord of the Abyss Realm came to the Primordial Heavenly Tao Academy to look for the Dean." "Why did he come to look for the Dean?" Master Yuanxing asked with interest. "The Abyss Realm has found the Heaven's chosen child," Saint Master Green Lotus said in a deep voice. Upon hearing this, Master Yuanxing's pupils shrank to the size of needles. His eyes narrowed into slits as he said, "Who is it?" Saint Master Green Lotus took a deep look at Master Yuanxing and said, "It's a little fellow called Jun. Moreover, I heard that Un and Sakyamuni came from the same starry sky fruit. I have to say, what a coincidence." "It's that kid." Master Yuanxing frowned, and there was a trace of killing intent in the depths of his eyes. How could he not know about Jun? He had heard about it from Sakyamuni a long time ago. Later on, after Sakyamuni had lost to Zhuowen in the extraterritorial battlefield, he had personally appeared and even had the intention to kill Zhuowen. However, the appearance of the Pill Array Divine Lord had allowed Zhuowen to escape death. However, Master Yuanxing had never expected that Zhuowen would actually be the Heaven's chosen child. How could this be possible? The Heaven's chosen child was clearly Sakyamuni. How could it be Zhuowen? "You know Zhuowen?" Saint Master Green Lotus looked at Master Yuanxing and asked doubtfully. "To tell you the truth, I've heard about this kid from Shirtion. However, how are you so sure that Jun is the Heaven's chosen child? I don't think there's anything outstanding about him." Master Yuanxing still raised the doubts in his heart. Actually, he didn't believe that Jun was the Heaven's chosen child. He didn't think that Zhuowen had the qualifications. The great speech soul master of the Abyss Realm, Bai Shiyuan, has seen Zhuowen and used the great speech soul technique to confirm it. Moreover, this kid has the primordial stone on him. He's someone who has been acknowledged by the primordial stone. He's definitely the Heaven's chosen child. Saint Master Green Lotus said calmly. The primordial stone. Master Yuanxing's pupils shrank slightly, and his heart sank completely. He naturally knew about the primordial stone. It was a treasure of heaven and earth. It was a connate treasure nurtured by the primordial tree. If Mu Feng had really been acknowledged by the primordial stone, then the possibility of him being the Heaven's chosen child was 100%. When did the Lord of the Abyss discover the Heaven's chosen child's land? Why did he suddenly come to our primordial heavenly Tao Academy? Master Yuanxing asked in surprise. It said that the Heaven's chosen child went to find the last primordial stone and hasn't returned for a long time. Now he's gone missing. The Lord of the Abyss mobilized many forces to search for him, but he couldn't find any trace of Zhuowen at all. The Lord of the Abyss came to the primordial heavenly Tao Academy this time to borrow our strength to help find Zhuowen. Saint Master Green Lotus said with a grave gaze. Chapter 4764. I see. The Abyss Master is actually unable to find a missing person in the chaotic starry sky. Could it be that Yun is dead or not in the chaotic starry sky? Master Yuanxing rubbed his chin and thought to himself. Saint Master Qing Lian shook his head. Yun is definitely not dead. It's even more impossible for him to leave the chaotic starry sky. Even the founder of the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy couldn't leave this starry sky. Do you think Zhuowen can do it? What do you mean? Master Yuanxing asked in surprise. He must be trapped in some hidden place, so we have to cooperate with the Abyss Master and mobilize the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy's power to find Zhuowen. Master Yuanxing, I hope you can cooperate. Saint Master Qing Lian stared straight at Master Yuanxing. He knew what the latter was thinking. From the beginning to the end, Master Yuanxing believed that the naughty Shiva was the chosen child. Now that the real chosen child had appeared, Master Yuanxing should have walked out of his fantasy. Master Yuanxing frowned and said in a low voice, Qing Lian, what do you mean? I think you're wrong. Not only that, but the other Saint Masters in the Academy also think you're wrong. In the past, we didn't find the chosen child, and because of you, we turned a blind eye to the naughty Shiva. But now, the real chosen child has appeared. Now, you have no reason to keep the naughty Shiva in the immemorial Heavenly Tao Academy. Saint Master Qing Lian said indifferently. Master Yuanxing narrowed his eyes and said coldly, Qing Lian, you called me here to ask me to give up my disciple? You're unreasonable. Jiuan, I know you value the naughty Shiva very much. I admit that Sakyamuni's talent is unparalleled, but his Tao root is too strange. We didn't say anything because of you. In fact, there are several sacred masters who want to get rid of Sakyamuni. None of us know what kind of atrocities the naughty Shiva will commit once they become powerful. You've always believed that he was the chosen one. Now that the true chosen one has appeared, I think you should consider our opinions, right? Saint Master Qing Lian persuaded softly. His eyes were fixed on Master Yuanxing's face. Master Yuanxing, on the other hand, had a solemn expression. He raised his head and looked at Saint Master Qinglian. He said seriously, Qinglian, don't mention this again. Sakura is my disciple, I can't possibly consider your opinions. Saint Master Blue Lotus furrowed his brows and couldn't help but sigh deeply. In truth, he had already expected Master Yuanxing to give this answer. However, he didn't think that Master Yuanxing wouldn't even consider it. Looks like Master Yuanxing really values the naughty Shiva very much. Qinglian, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Goodbye. Master Yuanxing stood up and left without looking back. Saint Master Qinglian's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly stood up to send him off. He even forgot to close the entrance of the mystic realm. Lian Rong followed closely behind Saint Master Qinglian. Very quickly, the courtyard was empty. However, what no one noticed was that near Master Yuanxing's original seat, an inconspicuous strand of hair slowly fell. Suddenly, this inconspicuous strand of hair moved slightly, as if it had suddenly come alive. Immediately, the strand of hair collapsed and spewed out a strange blood glow. A figure appeared in the courtyard. This was a handsome young man with a vertical scar between his brows. He was Sakyamuni. Old Qinglian, you specially called my master over, so it turns out that you want to drive me out. Damn it, and the other sacred masters in the courtyard. Sooner or later, I'll let you know that I, Sakyamuni, am the true chosen one. So what if Zhuowen is the chosen one? So what if he has the primordial stone? One day, I'll ruthlessly trample him under my feet and humiliate him. Sakyamuni looked at the entrance of the mystic realm. His expression became ugly as he muttered coldly. I hope that Saint Master Qinglian's mystic realm won't disappoint me. Sakyamuni retracted his gaze and looked towards the distant mountain range and the bustling world beyond the courtyard. The corners of his mouth curled up into an evil arc whoosh. Sakura stomped on the ground with his right foot and turned into a stream of light, quietly entering the distant horizon and disappearing in an instant. Not long after Sakyamuni left, Saint Master Qinglian and Lian Rong returned to the courtyard. Something's wrong with the aura. Saint Master Qinglian just sat down and frowned slightly. His enormous divine sense instantly spread into the courtyard. Master, what's wrong? Lian Rong saw Saint Master Qinglian's serious expression and could not help but ask. I sensed another aura nearby. This aura definitely does not belong to Master Yuanxing. Strange, could it be that I'm mistaken? Saint Master Blue Lotus carefully observed the entire courtyard with his spiritual sense, but he didn't find any clues at all. This made him very puzzled. Lian Rong stood quietly at the side and did not dare to say a word. She only silently watched Saint Master Qinglian's actions. Saint Master Qinglian retracted his divine sense. His sharp gaze landed on the mystic realm outside the courtyard. Lian Rong, guard the entrance of the mystic realm. If you discover anything, inform me immediately. I'll enter the mystic realm to take a look. Saint Master Qinglian instructed Lian Rong. The latter naturally did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly agreed. Saint Master Qinglian then turned into a stream of light and rushed into the depths of the mystic realm. His enormous and terrifying divine sense was like an endless net that radiated towards every corner of the mystic realm. His divine sense was soundless and formless. However, its range was extremely wide. The countless living beings in the mystic realm did not even sense anything. After an unknown period of time, Saint Master Qinglian stopped at the peak of a huge mountain that connected the heavens and the earth. His gaze passed through the layers of clouds surrounding the mountain and looked down at the countless living beings in the mystic realm. Nothing. Maybe it's just my imagination? Saint Master Qinglian muttered to himself. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Then, he turned into a stream of light and disappeared from the mystic realm. Master, did you discover anything? At the entrance of the mystic realm, Lian Rong bowed respectfully to Saint Master Qinglian and asked in a deep voice. Saint Master Qinglian shook his head and said, "Maybe I saw wrongly. Let's go." With that, Saint Master Qinglian brought Lian Rong out of the mystic realm and closed the entrance of the mystic realm. After Saint Master Qinglian left the mystic realm for an unknown period of time, in the center of a desert in the depths of the mystic realm, a grain of sand gently moved. Then, it burst out with endless blood light. Sakyamuni leaped up from the sand and floated in the air above the desert. What a close shave! Saint Master Qinglian is really sharp. He could actually sense my aura. Luckily, I entered the intangible state here in advance. Sakyamuni revealed a look of lingering fear. When Saint Master Qinglian rushed into the mystic realm, he was really shocked. He thought that he would be discovered. Luckily, he entered the intangible state in time and avoided Saint Master Qinglian's detection. From now on, this mystic realm belongs to me, Sakyamuni. Sakyamuni rose into the air and looked down at the countless living beings below with an evil smile on his face. Chapter 4765. In the depths of the ancient Heavenly Tao Academy, in a magnificent hall, the 9 great Saint Masters, including Saint Master Qinglian and Master Yuanxing, were all gathered here. In the deepest part of the hall, there were layers of curtains, and behind the curtains, there was a vaguely discernible imposing figure. The 9 great Saint Masters all lowered their heads, not daring to raise their heads to look at the imposing figure behind the curtains. This was because this person was the Dean of the ancient Heavenly Tao Academy, and also one of the 5 founders of the ancient Heavenly Tao Academy. He was also the only supreme existence who had survived. His name was Ancestor Tianju, and he was currently recognized as the strongest person in the 100 Outer Realms. It was said that he had already transcended the 10,000 techniques returned to 1, and his cultivation had reached an unfathomable level. 9 Saint Masters. You should have guessed the reason why I gathered you all here, right? Behind the curtains, Ancestor Tianju's ancient and vicissitudes of life voice came faintly, shaking one's soul and echoing endlessly. The 9 Saint Masters were all moved, and they all cupped their hands and bowed, saying in a deep voice, "Yes." Ancestor Tianju nodded, and with a wave of his sleeve, a figure walked out from the curtains. This person wore a black and gold crown and wore a navy blue luxurious robe. He looked to be in his 40s, with a square face, sharp eyebrows, and starry eyes. His entire body was emitting a fierce and powerful aura. When the 9 Saint Masters saw this middle-aged man, they were not surprised. They all cupped their hands and said, "Greetings, Abyss Master." This middle-aged man wearing a black and gold crown was none other than the supreme ruler of the Abyss realm, the Abyss Master. 9 Saint Masters, you're too polite. I've disturbed you this time, please don't take offense. The Abyss Master's eyes revealed an apologetic look, and he cupped his hands at the 9 great Saint Masters. Abyss Master is the one who's being polite. We still have to thank you. If it weren't for you, we might still not know the whereabouts of the Chosen One. A middle-aged man said with a smile. The Abyss Master looked over in the blink of an eye and saw that this person was wearing a dark purple brocade robe with a dark golden dragon and phoenix embroidered belt tied around his waist. He had a head of shiny black hair, a pair of deep eyes, and a jade-like face. This person was not unfamiliar. He was one of the 9 Saint Masters, Horned Dragon. Speaking of which, the Horned Dragon Saint Master had quite a good relationship with him. In the past, he often visited his cave residence in the Abyss realm as a guest. The two of them had established a friendship over time. Horned Saint Master. It should be the primeval Heavenly Tao Academy thanking you. If the Lord of the Deep Caves hadn't selflessly shared this information with us, who knows how long it would have taken us to find the real chosen one. The other Saint Masters all nodded, agreeing with what the Saint Master Horned Dragon said. Only the epic Saint Master stood there with a gloomy face, not saying a word. The Abyss Master clasped his hands at the Saint Masters and said, "The 100 territories are about to face a great disaster. The chosen one is our hope, so it's naturally impossible for me to keep this a secret. Moreover, the chosen one's whereabouts are unknown right now. Sigh, it's actually all my fault." The Abyss Master's face was filled with regret when he said that. He regretted letting Zhuowen leave the Abyss realm alone to search for the primordial stone. If he could have followed Zhuowen, perhaps things would not have turned out like this. Abyss Master, you don't have to blame yourself. Back then, you also respected the chosen one's choice, so you let him go alone. There's nothing wrong with that. Behind the curtain, Ancestor Tianju's calm voice sounded again. This voice had a unique power that made people gradually calm down. Now it has happened. It's useless to regret. Now what we need to do is to find that chosen one. Tell us everything that happened back then in full detail. Perhaps we can use it as a reference. Ancestor Tianju said indifferently. The Lord of the Abyss nodded and recounted every detail of what had happened when Zhuowen left, including where he had gone after leaving the Abyssal Realm. You said that the chosen one went to see a friend. Do you know where his friend came from? Ancestor Tianju asked curiously. The Abyss Master shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "I don't know his friend. This is Zhuowen's private matter. I'm too embarrassed to ask too much." As soon as he finished speaking, Ancestor Tianju fell silent. The air suddenly became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. "I've thought about it. Let's search for the chosen one in two directions. One of them is to find Zhuowen directly, and the other is to find the friend that Zhuowen mentioned. As long as one of these two directions can make a breakthrough, it shouldn't be difficult to find the chosen one in the end." Ancestor Tianju said slowly. "Dean, I'm willing to assist the Abyss Master in finding the chosen one." Saint Master Horned Dragon stepped out and cupped his hands towards the curtain. Immediately, the other Saint Masters stepped out one after another, all of them expressing their willingness to search for the heaven's chosen one. Only one person stood where he was without moving at all. This person was Master Yuanxing. "Ji Yuan, what are you waiting for? Why aren't you saying anything?" "That's right. That's the chosen one, the existence that will save the 100 regions in the future. Without him, our 100 regions will have no future." When the other Saint Masters saw that Master Yuanxing was motionless, they all raised their heads and tried to persuade him. Master Yuanxing's eyes were gloomy as he said in a low voice, "Everyone, I still have some things to do, so I can't find the time to follow you to find Jun." Hearing this, the other Saint Masters frowned, feeling somewhat displeased. Saint Master Qing Lian silently stared at Master Yuanxing and sighed softly in his heart. He really didn't understand why Master Yuanxing was so obsessed with the naughty Shiva. The true chosen one had already appeared, but he was still lying to himself. He still thought that Sakyamuni was the chosen one. It was truly unreasonable. This assistance is voluntary. If Ji Yuan is unwilling to go, don't force him. Patriarch Tianju spoke again, intimidating the other Saint Masters who wanted to persuade him. Horned Dragon, Jin Yong, Shui Huan, Gu Zhe, the four of you will assist the Abyss Master in investigating the whereabouts of the chosen one. Qing Lian, Kai Chen, Qiyang, Qing Lei, the four of you will go and collect clues about the friend that the chosen one mentioned. Patriarch Tianju was as dignified as the heavens. He began to arrange the 8 Saint Masters in an orderly manner. "We obey the Dean's decree." The 8 Saint Masters bowed deeply to Patriarch Tianju, their eyes filled with respect. The Abyss Master also bowed to Patriarch Tianju with admiration in his heart. He knew that with the help of the ancient Heavenly Tao Academy's power, he should be able to greatly increase his chances of finding Zhuowen. "I hope we can find Zhuowen this time. Otherwise, the 100 regions will really have no hope. The Abyss Master clenched his fists tightly, secretly looking forward to it. Chapter 4766. The 8 of you follow the Abyss Master. You can use the power of the Academy as you wish. As long as you can find the Chosen One, the 8 of you will have made a great contribution. Ancestor Tianju sat behind the curtain. His deep eyes passed through the layers of curtains and landed on Horned Dragon, Green Lotus, and the other Saint Masters in the hall. Yes. The 8 Saint Masters and the Abyss Master bowed and left the hall one after another. Before Saint Master Green Lotus left the hall, he looked deeply at the figure of Master Yuanxing, who was still standing in front of the hall, and sighed in his heart. Soon, only Master Yuanxing and the mysterious ancestor Tianju were left in the hall. Jiyuan, you deliberately did not look for the Chosen One. Other than believing that Sakyamune is the Chosen One and rejecting the true Chosen One, you have other motives, right? Ancestor Tianju's indifferent voice passed through the curtain and reached Master Yuanxing's ears. Master Yuanxing's pupils constricted into needles. He shook his head and said, "Dean, you're thinking too much, aren't you? I'm the Academy's Saint Master. I don't look for the Chosen One because I feel that I'm not up to the task. It has nothing to do with my disciple. If you really think so, then I'm relieved." Ancestor Tianju's calm voice sounded faintly. Master Yuanxing bowed respectfully to the front of the curtain before slowly leaving the hall. The moment he walked out of the hall, he realized that his back was completely soaked in sweat. Just now, when Ancestor Tianju questioned him, he could clearly feel the former's eyes passing through the curtain and landing on his body. That sharp gaze seemed to be able to peer into the deepest secrets in his heart. Damn it! Whether it's the Dean or the other Saint Masters, why do they dislike Sakyamune so much? Even if he's not the Chosen One, he's still my personal disciple. Master Yuanxing's eyes darkened. He hated the way the other Saint Masters and Ancestor Tianju looked at Sakyamune with strange gazes. As far as he was concerned, Sakura was a genius bestowed by the heavens, and he possessed exceptional natural talent and a unique Tao foundation. However, the other Saint Masters and the Dean always looked at Sakyamune and him like that. This made Master Yuanxing very angry. I'll let you know just how wrong you are. Shirtian will definitely be able to resist the immeasurable calamity and become the savior of the 100 outer domains. Master Yuanxing roared in his heart. Ancient star system, Imperial Astronomer Mystic Realm. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes in the depths of the serene and elegant attic. Because today was Yin-Yang City's annual mountain worshipping ceremony. In the past 8 months, apart from cultivating, Thun helped the Great Rose Gang expand their forces. With Zhuowen's participation, the Great Rose Gang's forces expanded extremely quickly. In just half a year, the Great Rose Gang became the largest force in the Great Rose Gang, second only to the City Lord's mansion. In the process of expansion, the Great Rose Gang naturally clashed with the Meng clan many times. In the end, the two forces had an unprecedented collision. In the end, the Great Rose Gang won. Since then, most of the Meng clan's properties in the Great Rose Gang were basically taken over by the Great Rose Gang. The Great Rose Gang became more and more powerful, while the Meng clan gradually declined. In the end, it became a weak force in the Great Rose Gang. It faced the risk of being destroyed at any time. As for the Meng clan's patriarch, Meng Yi, ever since the Meng clan declined, he was completely dispirited. He spent all his time looking for women and had no heart to cultivate. In the end, he died outside the Great Rose Gang. The news of Meng Yi's death caused a sensation. Many cultivators understood that Meng Yi's death might be related to the Great Rose Gang. But now, the Great Rose Gang was like the sun in the sky. Who would dare to provoke them? Everyone only dared to talk about it in private. Now, the Great Rose Gang's properties almost covered the entire Great Rose Gang. Even the City Lord's mansion was not far away. It could be seen how powerful the Great Rose Gang was now. In these 8 months, in the process of the Great Rose Gang's expansion, Yun also obtained a lot of benefits. Many precious cultivation resources were specially left for Zhuowen by Gang Master Shi Han for Zhuowen's cultivation. Zhuan's cultivation speed was also very fast. His cultivation had reached the peak of the heavenly Tao. He was not far from the Tao of no beginning. Only, Zhuan lacked an opportunity to smoothly step into the Tao of no beginning. Of course, during this time, Zhuan's divine soul had improved the fastest. Since entering the immemorial star galaxy, Zhuan could clearly feel that the energy in the immemorial star galaxy had special benefits for his divine soul. Cultivating the divine soul in the immemorial star galaxy was several times faster than in the chaotic starry sky. Especially in the secret realm of the imperial astronomer, his divine soul improved even faster. It was unbelievable. Although Zhuan's divine soul had successfully broken through 8 months ago, in these 8 months, his divine soul had advanced by leaps and bounds. It had already reached the peak of the Tao of no beginning. It would not be long before his divine soul broke through again. Dong dong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Then Xichang's clear voice sounded, "Brother Zhua, Father wants you to go to the reception hall. The city lord's mansion is about to start preparing for the mountain worshipping ceremony." Zhuan stood up and opened the door. He saw Xichang, Yangzhua, and Yu Hong standing outside. "Sorry to trouble you." Zhuan smiled and followed Xichang and the other two to the reception hall. When Zhuan arrived at the reception hall, he saw Shihan and the Great Rose Gang's higher-ups had been waiting for a long time. Shihan saw Zhuan at a glance and hurried to greet him. Her face was solemn. "Zhua Xiaoyu, I have recommended you to the city lord as one of the guards entering the mountain. This trip is not safe, so you must be careful." Shihan walked to Zhuan's side and reminded him in a low voice. Zhuan looked at Shihan and said gratefully, "Gang leader Shihan, thank you for your trouble. Don't worry, I will be very careful this time." Shihan nodded and turned to look at the other higher-ups. She said loudly, "Everyone follow me. The mountain worshipping ceremony will be held in the city lord's mansion. Once the ceremony is over, we will enter the mountain. This time, we must not tarnish the Great Rose Gang's reputation. Gang leader is mighty. We will not let you down." Many of the higher-ups cupped their hands at Shihan, their faces brimming with excitement. Shihan nodded with satisfaction. She walked in front with Zhuan and went straight to the city lord's mansion. The city lord's mansion of Liangyi City was located in the center of the city. The city lord's mansion occupied a large area. Whether it was the building or the exterior, it was much more majestic than the Great Rose Gang's. At this moment, the entrance of the city lord's mansion was bustling with noise and excitement. Numerous figures were holding invitations as they stepped through the entrance of the city lord's mansion. The clamor and the sound of discussions were endless. Chapter 4767. Hongqiang Gang. We're here. Following the doorman's resounding shout, the clamorous city lord's mansion instantly quieted down. Countless gazes gathered at the entrance of the city lord's mansion. Ever since Yuan joined the Hongqiang Gang 8 months ago, it had developed rapidly and became the top power in Yinyang City, second only to the city lord's mansion. In the past, many of the powers that came to the city lord's mansion would have disdained the Hongqiang Gang. But now, the Hongqiang Gang was extremely important, and they had to curry favor with it. When Shihan, Zhuan, and the rest of the Hongqiang Gang stepped into the main hall, many of the power's representatives went up to greet them with eager smiles on their faces. "Gang leader Shihan, it's been a long time since we last met, and you look even more radiant. No wonder the Hongqiang Gang is getting better and better. It's all because of Gang leader Shihan's brilliance. Gang leader Shihan is extremely talented and peerless. In the future, the Hongqiang Gang will be able to reach a higher level and be comparable to the city lord's mansion." One by one, the power's representatives held their bronze wine cups and fought to be the first to raise their cups to Shihan. Shihan smiled and returned their greetings one by one, his face full of modesty. Originally, he had planned to introduce Zhuan, but the latter had already said that he didn't want to be disturbed, so Shihan gave up on this idea. While Shihan was drinking and chatting with the power's representatives, Zhuan walked to a long table in the corner of the main hall. This long table was filled with fine wine and delicacies for the guests in the main hall. "Big brother Zhua, Aren't you going with father? This way, you can get to know more of the real big shots in Yinyang City. Shiqiang brought Yang Zue and Yu Hong to Zhuowen's side, her beautiful eyes filled with astonishment. I'm a quiet person, and I don't like that kind of atmosphere. As for making friends with the big shots in Yinyang City, leave it to your father. I'm not suited for this kind of thing. Zhuowen picked up the bronze wine cup at the edge of the long table and took a sip. Feeling the burning sensation of the wine entering his throat, his eyes revealed a look of enjoyment. Hearing this, Shiqiang felt helpless, but she didn't say anything. However, her heart was filled with admiration. Ever since Zhuowen joined the Hongqiang gang, his actions had earned her admiration. Without a doubt, Zhuowen's strength should be above his father, Shihan. However, he didn't use his power to oppress others, nor was he overbearing. Instead, he was amiable and approachable. In these 8 months, he had done many things for the Hongqiang gang. The most important thing, he had refined many divine elixir pills for them. Of course, Shihan, the Chang 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 Ong 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 Chang's Shihan Chang Ong Ong gang, Ilayang Chang Chang Ong 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 Ong. If it weren't for Zhuowen's divine pills, the members of the Great Rose Gang wouldn't have been able to cultivate so quickly and expand the Great Rose Gang to its current scale. Shiqiang, you're finally here. I clearly sent someone to deliver a message to you, didn't I? This. Do you really not want to see me? Suddenly, a gloomy voice sounded out from the front of the long table. Zhuowen raised his head to look over, and he saw a slender young man in embroidered clothes with a slightly pale countenance walking over slowly. The young man in embroidered clothes glanced at Zhuowen before withdrawing his gaze. Obviously, he'd taken Zhuowen to be a servant of Shiqiang and the others, and he didn't care at all. Gong Hongji, I've made myself very clear, right? I'm completely not interested in your suggestion. Can you stop bothering me? Shiqiang's beautiful eyes squinted slightly, and her expression instantly went cold. Yang Zue and Yu Hong even walked out and obstructed Shiqiang's path. Shiqiang, you really don't know what's good for you. I admit that your Hongqiang gang has indeed developed swiftly. In a short 8 months of time, you were actually able to attain such an extent. But your resources and reserves are still too shallow, and it's far inferior to our city governor's estate. If we're able to form an alliance through marriage, then it would be extremely beneficial to the Hongqiang gang. This is the only way out for your Hongqiang gang to transform from a sparrow into a phoenix. The corners of Gong Hongji's mouth revealed an evil smile as he stared fixedly at Shiqiang, and he spoke fearlessly. Gong Hongji, you're only the son of a concubine of the city governor's estate. A mere son of a concubine wants to form an alliance through marriage with Shiqiang. Do you think it can bring benefits to the Hongqiang gang? Truly laughable. I think that you just want to use our Hongqiang gang to rise up in the city governor's estate, right? Yu Hong laughed coldly repeatedly, and he stared at Gong Hongji with a hostile gaze. They'd long since known what sort of trash this Gong Hongji was. He was only a son of a concubine of the city governor's estate, and he was even a silk pants with no ambition. He only knew how to abuse his power. In reality, Gong Hongji's authority in the city governor's estate was really not great, and even his status was inferior to those few true direct descendants. Someone like Gong Hongji actually dared to threaten their Hongqiang gang. Could it be that he really thought that the Hongqiang gang was still that unknown small gang from before? Yu Hong's voice had just sounded out when a black figure flashed over and fiercely smashed onto Yu Hong's face, slapping him flying. Yu Hong, are you all right? Shiqiang and Yang Zue hurriedly helped Yu Hong up, and they both looked at Gong Hongji with furious gazes, only to see a stooped old man standing quietly beside Gong Hongji. This old man's aura was restrained and steady. But to be able to easily slap Yu Hong flying, he should probably be a Heavenly Laws Dao level powerhouse. You're called Yu Hong, right? Your guts are really big to actually dare slander me like this. Do you know the consequences of slandering me? Gong Hongji's gaze was sinister, endlessly furious in his heart. The identity of being born of a concubine was the stain of his life. He did not allow others to mention it in front of him. Whoever mentioned it had to die. At this moment, Gong Hongji had killing intent aroused. But he did not lose his reason, knowing that killing people in the main hall had a bad influence. Elder Qi, cripple this brat who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Gong Hongji laughed coldly in succession. Yes. The stooped old man nodded his head and bowed, and then he walked towards Yu Hong with a cold gaze. Yang Zhuo and Xiqiang hurriedly blocked in front of Yu Hong, their eyes full of fury as they looked at this stooped old man. Enough of messing around. For my sake, please stop. Suddenly, Yuan, who sat upright before the long table, spoke slowly. His voice was very soft, yet it resounded in their ears like a thunderclap. The stooped old man stopped and turned around to look at Zhuan with surprise and bewilderment. At that instant earlier, he actually sensed a feeling that caused him to be shocked from Zhuowen's voice. Who do you think you are? You think I'll stop for your sake? Gong Hongji glanced coldly at Zhuan, and his face was covered in ridicule as he spoke. I'll give you another chance. Kneel before Xiqiang and the other two right now, kowtow and admit your mistakes. Moreover, slap yourself 10 times, and I can take it as if this matter never happened. Zhuowen spoke with an icy cold expression. Gong Hongji was stunned when he heard this, and then he stared fixedly at Zhuowen before roaring with laughter. Little bastard! Have you gone mad? You want me to kneel? Gong Hongji hadn't finished speaking when a strong wind swept over and smashed heavily onto his face, causing him to be blasted flying. Chapter 4768. Bang. Gong Hongji landed heavily on the ground more than 10 meters away, his entire body in a sorry state. You dare to hit me? Gong Hongji held his swollen cheek and looked at Zhuan with resentment as he roared like a madman. Gong Hongji was almost mad with anger. This was the territory of the City Lord's mansion, and as a member of the City Lord's mansion, he was actually slapped in the face by an outsider. This was too humiliating. I'll give you one more chance. Kneel in front of Xiqiang and the other two, kowtow and admit your mistake, and slap yourself 10 times, and I'll pretend that this never happened. Zhuan sat at the long table and looked down at Gong Hongji with cold eyes. His words were like thunder as he said, "Are you kneeling or not?" Gong Hongji's pupils constricted into needles. At that moment, he actually felt a terrifying aura from Zhuan, causing his entire body to tremble. But soon, Gong Hongji came back to his senses and his eyes were filled with anger. Bastard! Elder Qi, kill him for me! Gong Hongji roared angrily. The stooped old man's eyes flickered. His perception was much sharper than Gong Hongji's, and he could vaguely sense that Zhuowen's strength was not simple. But he did not dare to disobey Gong Hongji's orders, so he stood on the spot and hesitated. Elder Qi, what are you still standing there for? Why aren't you attacking? Gong Hongji saw Elder Qi hesitating and could not help but shout in exasperation. Yes. Elder Qi's eyes revealed a ruthless expression. Even if this kid was not simple, he was not weak either. Moreover, this was the City Lord's mansion, so he did not believe that this kid would really dare to cause trouble. You shouldn't have offended young Master Hongji. Elder Qian took a step forward with his right foot and silently appeared in front of Zhuowen. A skinny palm swept through the air and heavily slapped toward Zhuowen's glabella. Zhuan was still sitting at the long table, as if he turned a blind eye to Elder Qi's attack. He did not move at all, as if he was scared silly. Big Brother Zhua! Xiqiang, Yang Zhuo, and Yu Hong exclaimed. Although they understood that Zhuowen's strength was indeed formidable, but now that he was sitting there without any resistance, their hearts were naturally filled with worry. You're just a fox trying to intimidate others. I know. Gong Hongji covered his swollen cheeks as he watched the elder's attacks getting closer and closer to Zhuan. He couldn't help but reveal a smug smile. Rip. The old man's skinny palm tore through the air, getting closer and closer to Zhuowen's face. When it was only a foot away from Zhuowen's forehead, a dazzling purple gold light surged out. Suddenly, a beam of purple gold light shot out like an arrow and entered Elder Qian's palm, instantly piercing into the depths of his soul. Elder Qi's body suddenly stopped. His face was filled with pain and malevolence as he looked at Zhuan with fear. You shouldn't have killed me. Zhuan was still sitting at the long table. His voice was as calm as water, but it revealed a chilling coldness. Elder Chi's eyes revealed a strong sense of remorse. In the end, he fell on his back and stopped breathing. The moment Zhuowen's soul power entered his body, his soul had already been wiped out by Zhuowen's soul attack. Elder Chi, what are you doing? Gong Hongji saw Elder Chi inexplicably fall to the ground and could not help but berate him loudly. Unfortunately, Elder Chi did not make a sound and even his breath had completely disappeared. Gong Hongji shouted a few more times and finally discovered to his horror that Elder Chi seemed to have died on the spot. But how was this possible? Elder Chi was a powerhouse of the path of heavenly Tao and was a well-known powerhouse in the entire Yin and Yang city. Unless it was a powerhouse at the level of the path of no beginning, no other powerhouse could kill him. Could it be? Gong Hongji's eyes narrowed into needles as he looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. Could this boy be a powerhouse at the path of no beginning? Impossible. There aren't many powerhouses at the path of no beginning in Yin and Yang city. I know all of them, but I've never seen this boy before. How can it be him? Gong Hongji shook his head, but his footsteps involuntarily retreated. His heart gradually sank. Did I ask you to retreat? Zhuowen's indifferent eyes landed on Gong Hongji, making the latter tremble all over and involuntarily stop. This is the City Lord Manor. No matter how powerful your strength is, could it be that you dare to kill me? Once I die, you'll have thoroughly offended the City Lord Manor. At that time, you'll have to face the City Lord Manor's endless pursuit. Gong Hongji composed his mind and stared fixedly at Zhuowen, immediately bringing out the City Lord Manor to threaten Zhuowen. Even if your City Lord comes over, he can't save you too. Moreover, who do you think you are? A mere concubine's son of the City Lord Manor dares to be so arrogant and despotic? Your death is actually a good thing for the City Lord Manor. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he waved his sleeve and a surging divine power swept out like an arrow. It instantly penetrated between Gong Hongji's eyebrows and went deep into his divine soul, completely annihilating his divine soul. Gong Hongji's eyes widened as he stared fixedly at Zhuowen. The depths of his eyes were filled with remorse. He was regretting that he had to flirt with women and provoke such a person who had no taboos. If he had been more cautious and not so arrogant, perhaps he wouldn't have died like this. Plop. When Gong Hongji's body fell heavily on the ground, it finally attracted the attention of everyone in the main hall. It's Gong Hongji. This person actually killed Gong Hongji. Who is he? How can he be so bold? Although Gong Hongji is a concubine's son, he is still the descendant of the City Lord. He actually killed Gong Hongji just like that. This is a complete feud with the City Lord Manor. The crowd was in an uproar. They looked at Gong Hongji's body in disbelief, then looked at Zhuowen who was sitting at the long table. Their hearts trembled violently. At this moment, Shihan was drinking and chatting happily with City Lord Gong Jinghuan. He was also attracted by the commotion. Gong Hongji. Gong Jinghuan narrowed his eyes. He recognized the face of the body on the ground at a glance. Wasn't it his concubine's son, Gong Hongji? Although he didn't like this concubine's son very much, he was still his descendant. Now that he was killed at the banquet, wasn't that a slap to his face? Shihan also noticed the commotion, especially when he saw Zhuowen, Shichang, and the others. His heart suddenly thumped, and he knew that something was wrong. Could it be that this Gong Hongji was killed by Zhuowen? Especially when he saw Gong Jinghuan's gloomy face, Shihan's heart became more and more uneasy. Sect Master Shihan. Let's go over and take a look. I want to see who is so bold as to kill a member of the City Lord Manor at the banquet of the City Lord Manor. Gong Jinghuan called out to Shihan. Without waiting for the latter's reply, he strode towards Zhuowen. His eyes were extremely cold and filled with killing intent. Chapter 4769. Were you the one who killed him? Gong Jinghuan walked up to Gong Hongji's corpse and stared coldly at Zhuowen as he asked in a low voice. Zhuowen glanced at Gong Jinghuan and nodded. Yes. He could feel that Gong Jinghuan's strength was not simple. He should be a Tao of no beginning cultivator, and his aura was even stronger than Shihan's. He should be the city lord of the city lord mansion, Gong Jinghuan. Then do you know who I am? Gong Jinghuan was so angry that he laughed and asked. City lord Gong Jinghuan. Zhuowen said calmly. Then do you know who he is? Gong Jinghuan pointed at Gong Hongji and asked. Your bastard son, Gong Hongji. Zhuowen said indifferently. Gong Jinghuan's pupils shrank as he stared coldly at Zhuowen and said, Since you know that he is of my bloodline, you still dare to kill him in my city lord mansion? Do you not put me in your eyes at all? Are you trying to cause trouble? Zhuowen said calmly, It's not that I want to cause trouble. It's that Gong Hongji is deliberately causing trouble. If he didn't provoke me first, I wouldn't have made a move. He only has himself to blame. After saying that, Zhuowen looked at Gong Jinghuan with indifferent eyes and a wisp of purple-gold divine radiance burst out. He continued, City Lord Gong. Don't tell me you also want to attack me without knowing what's right and wrong? Gong Jinghuan calmed down immediately as if cold water had been poured on him. He actually felt a coldness in the depths of Zhuowen's eyes that made his heart tremble. In the coldness, he also felt a strong sense of danger. There was no doubt that the young man in front of him was very dangerous, more dangerous than anyone else present. Who are you? Gong Jinghuan took a deep breath and asked about Zhuowen's origin. Yun of the Hongqiang gang. Zhuowen said indifferently. Gong Jinghuan's pupils shrank into needles as his heart trembled slightly. No wonder the divine radiance that burst out of this person's eyes made his heart tremble. So this kid is Yun from the Hongqiang gang. He naturally knew of Zhuowen's fame. It could be said that the rapid rise of the Hongqiang gang in such a short period of time had something to do with this Zhuowen. When the Meng family's Meng attacked the Hong Rose gang and almost destroyed the Hong Rose gang, it was this Yun who saved the Hong Rose gang. This person was definitely an expert of the Tao of no beginning, and he might be even stronger. This time, he had deliberately invited the Great Rose gang with the main purpose of getting to know this Yun. However, he did not expect that Gong Hongji would actually provoke an expert like Zhuowen at such an important banquet. He truly deserved to die. The crowd was also in an uproar. Naturally, they had heard of Zhuowen and many rumors about Zhu. Many powers in Yin and Yang City had already faintly regarded this mysterious Zhuowen as the #1 person below the city lord. This showed how high their evaluation of Zhuowen was. So you are Zhuowen from the Hong Rose gang. I am the city lord, Gong Jinghuan. I have long wanted to know you, young Master Zhua. Gong Jinghuan took a deep breath, and the anger in his heart gradually calmed down. The corner of his mouth revealed a smile, and he extended his right hand to Zhuowen. Zhuowen looked at Gong Jinghuan with some surprise. He did not expect the latter to endure like this. It seemed that the latter really valued him. As the saying goes, one does not hit a smiling person. Since Gong Jinghuan had already treated him with courtesy, Yun naturally could not be unforgiving. City Lord Gong. I am also responsible for this matter. I made a move in public and ruined the mood of your banquet. Please forgive me, City Lord. Zhuowen stood up and clasped his hands to apologize to Gong Jinghuan. Zhuowen was not an unreasonable person. Gong Hongji provoked him first and even wanted to kill him. Naturally, his counterattack was justified. But he killed Gong Hongji and ruined the banquet's atmosphere. He also indeed had responsibility. This was indisputable. Seeing that Zhuowen was so reasonable, Gong Jinghuan's expression also eased up a lot. Waving his hand, he said, Young Master Zhua is too courteous. It was all my unfilial son who ran amok. To actually dare provoke young Master. Truly, death is not to be regretted. Gong Jinghuan's attitude changed so quickly that it made Xichang, Yang Zhua, and Yu Hong 3 people dumbfounded. The 3 of them saw it clearly just now. Gong Jinghuan came in a threatening manner, making it clear that he had an appearance of wanting to denounce a punitive expedition. Now, after learning about Zhuowen's identity, his attitude immediately did a 180-degree turn. They knew that it was not that Gong Jinghuan this person was knowledgeable and reasonable, but because Zhuowen's strength was sufficiently powerful. Zhuowen's strength was insufficient and he was a nobody, then Gong Jinghuan would have already ordered people to capture Zhuowen and the 3 of them just now. Would he still treat them with courtesy like now? The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled slightly, but he took out a jade bottle from his sleeve, handed it to Gong Jinghuan, and said with a faint smile, "City Lord Gong. I'm also responsible this time. This is my apology gift. I hope that City Lord can accept it." "Young Master Zhua, you're also too courteous." Gong Jinghuan hesitated for a moment. Seeing Zhuowen's resolute attitude, he also accepted it. He opened the bottle cork and took a look. An extremely rich medicinal fragrance gushed out. Gong Jinghuan put the cork back on without even thinking about it. Peak Fifth Firmament Eternal Divine Pill. Gong Jinghuan was utterly shocked in his heart. That medicinal strength just now, he absolutely would not be mistaken. Only a Peak Fifth Firmament Eternal Divine Pill could emit that kind of surging medicinal strength. One must know that this level of divine pill could be said to be extremely rare in Yin and Yang City. It was simply priceless. Even if Gong Jinghuan was rich, this level of divine pill could be counted with two hands. Now, Zhuan actually took out a bottle at once. How could Gong Jinghuan not know how precious this was? "Young Master Zhua, this thing is too precious. I can't accept it." Gong Jinghuan thought for a moment, and still pushed the jade bottle back to Zhuan. Zhuan shook his head and said with a faint smile, "City Lord Gong, this gift was originally prepared for you, and will still need your help in the upcoming mountain worship ceremony. Just accept it." Hearing this, Gong Jinghuan understood in his heart. He naturally knew what Zhuan was referring to. "In that case, thank you very much, young Master Zhua." Gong Jinghuan cupped his fists cautiously to Zhuan and continued, "Young Master Zhua, please forgive me for my negligence just now. Now, you and I have to get drunk and have a good chat." Zhuan smiled slightly and took the wine cup that Gong Jinghuan handed over. He walked side by side with the latter into the center of the banquet, drinking and chatting, laughing and joking, while Shihan followed by the side, occasionally chiming in a sentence. The atmosphere of the conversation could be said to be very harmonious. At the same time, many faction representatives in the banquet would fight to be the first to propose a toast to Zhuan. Each and every one of them was as passionate as fire, wanting to get to know this important figure that even the city lord had to treat courteously. The banquet did not last long. Gong Jinghuan walked to the front stage and said to everyone, "Everyone, the mountain worship ceremony is officially about to begin. The virgin boys and girls, various magic artifacts, and other items required for the mountain worship this time have all been prepared. This is all thanks to everyone's donation. Otherwise, the items for the mountain worship ceremony might not be able to be gathered so quickly. This Gong thanks everyone here." As he spoke, Gong Jinghuan cupped his fists at everyone, causing everyone to wave their hands one after another, saying that the city lord was too courteous. "Next, it's time to choose the mountain protector envoy." Gong Jinghuan looked around and spoke slowly. Once these words came out, the entire banquet instantly quieted down. Chapter 4770. Full Text Divine Soul Supreme's latest chapter. Everyone in the hall became nervous, their gazes fixed on Gong Jinghuan. The so-called mountain protector was to escort the offerings needed for the mountain sacrificial ceremony up the divine mountain. And the divine mountain was full of danger. The chosen mountain protector every year had to be someone with sufficient strength. Otherwise, it was very easy to be annihilated by exotic beasts halfway before the offerings were delivered to the divine mountain. But this also meant that the danger of the mountain protector was extremely great. If one was not careful, it was very easy to lose one's life on the way to the divine mountain. Therefore, every time the mountain sacrificial ceremony, powerhouses who took the initiative to become mountain protector were few and far between. It was all assigned by the city lord manner. Gong Jinghuan was in a great mood. This time, not only did he obtain the divine pill that Zhuan gave him, but Zhuan also took the initiative to become the mountain protector this time. He was very clear that with a powerhouse like Zhuan holding down the fort, the escort this time should not be too big of a problem. They should be able to send the offerings into the divine mountain smoothly. "Everyone, this time, there's a powerhouse who took the initiative to become the mountain protector," Gong Jinghuan said with a slight smile. In the main hall, everyone's eyes flickered, revealing looks of surprise. They did not expect that there would actually be someone who took the initiative to become the mountain protector. This was a thankless job. This powerhouse who took the initiative to volunteer is the one beside me, young Master Jun. Gong Jinghuan pointed at Zhuowen beside him and said with a smile on the corners of his mouth. I didn't expect it to be Lord Zhua. With Lord Zhua taking charge of the mountain protector this time, it should be smoother. Lord Zhua's strength is much stronger than all of us. There shouldn't be any mishaps this time. Even if I'm chosen, I'm also willing to go. In the banquet hall, the crowd discussed animatedly, their eyes filled with excitement. To most people, the mountain sacrificial ceremony was an extremely important event. If there was a powerhouse leading, it was naturally something that everyone would be delighted about. Gong Jinghuan looked around and found that everyone's emotions were stirred up. The corners of his mouth could not help revealing a smile. Next, I'll start announcing the list of the other mountain protectors. This mountain sacrificial ceremony is very important to all of us. I hope that everyone can work together and not slack off. Gong Jinghuan spoke again and took out a jade slip. He put his mind into the jade slip and began to read the list of mountain guardians. Zhou Yan, Chen Yanqi, Wang Chenlong. However, all of the cultivators whose names were called out had excited expressions on their faces, and none of them had any objections. They all knew that this time, with a great expert like Zhuan following them, the team should be foolproof. Therefore, they didn't want to delay like before. After reading the list, Gong Jinghuan smiled and said, Fellow Taoists, please step forward. Crush. As soon as he said this, a group of people walked out of the crowd and stopped not far from Zhuowen and Gong Jinghuan. Zhuowen looked up and realized that there were more than 10 mountain protectors this time. Their auras were not simple and they were basically all at the level of Heaven Spell Dao. Brother Zhua, please come with me. Gong Jinghuan looked at Zhuowen and gestured politely. Zhuowen nodded and followed behind Gong Jinghuan, whereas the 10+ cultivators that had been chosen followed closely behind. After Gong Jinghuan and Zhuan left, everyone in the banquet hall followed. Shi Han led Shi Chang, Yang Zhua, and Yu Hong at the front. They were still a little worried about Zhuan. Although Zhuan was indeed powerful, the divine mountain was even more dangerous. In the past mountain sacrificial ceremonies, there had been cases of powerhouses with no beginning of Dao techniques dying on the divine mountain. However, such cases were very rare. In the center of the city lord's mansion, there was a large courtyard. At this moment, there were 2 rows of boys and girls standing in the courtyard. These boys and girls wore the same white brocade robes and white high crowns. All of them had their heads lowered and were silent. On both sides of the boys and girls, there were all kinds of items. There were divine weapons, divine medicines, delicacies, nectar, and all kinds of offerings. These offerings were placed in red chests and carriages. They were probably going to be transported to the divine mountain. When Zhuan was brought into the courtyard by Gong Jinghuan, he couldn't help but frown when he saw the scene before him. There were more than 100 boys and girls standing in the courtyard. All of them had their heads lowered and looked sad. Some of the girls even had tear stains on their cheeks. Zhuan didn't need to think to know that these boys and girls wouldn't be willing to become living sacrifices. However, they had no choice but to be at the mercy of others. Around the boys and girls stood nearly 100 armored soldiers. They were the guards who were going to the divine mountain this time. They were there to protect the boys and girls as well as to transport the offerings. These soldiers were all elites carefully selected by the city lord's mansion. Therefore, all of them were of high quality and were not weak. Brother Zhua, you will lead this team to the divine mountain this time. I hope everyone can return safely this time. Gong Jinghuan cupped his hands at Zhuowen and said. Zhuan nodded and said, Rest assured, City Lord. This Zhuo will definitely do my best to escort the team safely to the divine mountain. Gong Jinghuan nodded and took out a jade slip. He handed it to Zhuan and said, Brother Zhua, what's recorded in this jade slip is the correct route to the divine mountain. As well as how to place the offerings and where they should be placed, it's recorded clearly inside. Zhuan received the jade slip. Although his face didn't show it, his heart was full of excitement. He had once attempted to enter the Divine Mountain but didn't know the correct route at all and didn't dare to go too deep. Now, with this jade slip, he should be able to avoid those dangerous places in advance when he entered the 100 Beasts forest again and reached the Divine Mountain smoothly. 2 hours later, everyone set off for the Divine Mountain. When the time comes, I'll personally send everyone off. Before that, I hope that everyone can get familiar with each other. After all, the trip to the Divine Mountain this time points to disaster. Everyone needs to get used to each other and work together as one when the time comes. Tide over the difficulties. Gong Jinghuan cupped his hands and said seriously to everyone in the courtyard. Hearing this, the dozen or so mountain guardians nodded and began to communicate. Of course, they were all trying to worm their way into being friends with Zhuan. Zhuan didn't refuse them and chatted cheerfully with the other mountain guardians. In a short while, they became familiar with each other. Zhuo Xiaoyu. This trip will be extremely difficult, so you must be careful. If you really encounter danger, your own safety is the priority. Shihan walked forward and advised with eyes full of worry. Shichang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong also came forward and said goodbye to Zhuan. They knew very well that Zhuan might never return from this trip. As for the purpose of Zhuowen's trip to the Divine Mountain, they had long heard from Shihan. You don't have to worry. Nothing will happen to me. But you guys, if I'm not here, you still have to cultivate well. You also have to cultivate the soul technique that I've imparted to you. Zhuan looked at Shichang and the others and comforted them with a smile. During this period of time, in order to repay Shihan's help, Zhuan had taught them some basic soul techniques, allowing their souls to have the opportunity to constantly strengthen and condense into substance, allowing them to carry out simple attacks. As for the soul sword intent, it was Zhuowen's secret, so he naturally wouldn't easily teach them. But even so, the soul technique was endlessly useful to Shihan and Shichang. Chapter 4771. Big Brother Zhua. Don't worry, we'll definitely cultivate well. Shichang, Yang Zue, and Yu Hong hurriedly nodded in agreement, but a trace of reluctance arose in their hearts. For some reason, they kept having a feeling that this trip to the Divine Mountain would probably be the last time they would see Zhuan. 2 hours later, under the lead of City Lord Gong Jinghuan, the mountain protectors led the sacrificial team out of the city lord's estate and arrived outside the city gates. Brother Zhua, this trip is fraught with danger, so you must be extremely careful. Gong Jinghuan stood outside the city gates and cupped his hands toward Zhuan as he bowed. Don't worry, City Lord Gong, I'll naturally be careful. Zhuan smiled faintly. Gong Jinghuan was rather relieved when he heard this. After all, Zhuowen's strength was obvious, so it shouldn't be too big of a problem to safely escort the team into the Divine Mountain. At the same time, the other mountain protectors bid farewell to their friends and family. Before long, Zhuan led the team out of Yinyang City and headed towards the depths of the 100 Beasts forest. Not long after the team entered the 100 Beasts forest, the terrifying and shrill roars of beasts rose and fell one after another. The dozen mountain protectors led by Zhuan were naturally calm and composed, but the young boys and girls were so frightened that their faces turned ghastly pale, their bodies trembled, and their eyes were filled with terror. Zhuan took out the jade slip and carefully looked through the route recorded in the jade slip, then led the team forward. He knew that the route recorded in the jade slip was the painstaking effort of the ancestors of Yinyang City. After countless people had died, they finally explored such a relatively safe route to the Divine Mountain. The sky gradually darkened. Pitch black enveloped the entire 100 Beasts forest, causing the entire forest to be covered in a layer of terrifying shadow. Zhuowen's team had already advanced 1/3 of the way, and they hadn't encountered any obstacles along the way. Set up camp. Patrol the periphery. Once your divine consciousness discovers anything unusual, report it immediately. With Zhuowen's order, the troops immediately stopped and began to set up camp. The soldiers were deployed by Zhuowen in an orderly manner. The dozen or so mountain protectors who followed Zhuowen secretly nodded their heads when they saw how well Zhuowen deployed the troops. They were even more convinced of Zhuowen's abilities. Actually, when one's cultivation reached Zhuowen's level, they didn't need to rest at all. Naturally, they could advance through the night. However, Zhuan was not tired. Instead, he was afraid of the 100 Beasts forest. He had stayed in the 100 Beasts forest for a period of time and knew that the 100 Beasts forest was much more terrifying at night than during the day. The number of strange beasts that came out to hunt for food was also much more terrifying. If they were to travel through the night, it would undoubtedly increase the danger. Zhuan was not in such a hurry, and there was no need to risk everyone's lives. Zhuan leaped up and landed at the edge of the tent. He took out a formation disc and planned to lay down a large array, which attracted the attention of the mountain protectors. One of them, a burly middle-aged man, walked up and asked curiously, "Master Zhua, are you setting up a formation?" The 100 Beasts forest is more dangerous than we thought. It's not safe to rely on people to patrol, so I set up an illusory array near the tent to cover our tracks. Zhuan said calmly. "Master Mu, you're so powerful. You even know how to set up a divine array." The burly middle-aged man's eyes lit up and he clicked his tongue in amazement. The other mountain protectors were also in awe of Zhuan. After setting up the illusory array, Zhuan sent the burly man and the mountain protectors away. He then returned to his tent and sat cross-legged to meditate. He didn't cultivate. Instead, he was silently pondering. The imperial astronomer had said that only by climbing to the top of the sacred mountain would he be able to obtain the benefits of the Mystery Land and leave the Mystery Land smoothly. Zhuan had a hunch that if he could obtain the benefits of the Mystery Land, he should be able to break through the shackles of all skills to one in a short time and reach the Archean God realm in one go. At that time, he would be able to come into contact with the true essence of the primordial Hong tree's power. Once he obtained the primordial Hong tree's origin, Zhuan believed that his strength would undergo a qualitative transformation. At that time, he might not only possess the power to resist the immeasurable calamity, but also the power to resist the primordial divine demon. What will the future hold? I have to take it one step at a time. First, I have to break through the realm and leave the Mystery Land. Zhuan muttered to himself and slowly closed his eyes. The night passed without a word. With the patrol and the illusory array set up by Zhuan, the team passed the night quite quietly. As expected, some of the patrol members were unlucky enough to encounter the exotic beasts. The lucky ones managed to escape, while the unlucky ones died in the hands of the exotic beasts. Let's move on. After they were ready to set off, Zhuan gave the order and led the team towards the Divine Mountain. The deeper they went into the 100 Beasts forest, the more nervous Zhuan became. When he first entered the 100 Beasts forest, he also wanted to enter the sacred mountain. However, the deeper he went into the forest, the more exotic beasts there were. Moreover, they seemed to know his position in advance and attacked him crazily. If he had encountered so many terrifying exotic beasts like before, he would naturally be able to escape easily. However, the team he was leading would most likely be wiped out. However, to Zhuan's relief, as they continued to go deeper into the 100 Beasts forest, the team did not encounter any danger or exotic beasts. It seems that I really have to choose the right route to enter the sacred mountain. Zhuan secretly sighed. He knew very well that the reason why he could enter the depths of the 100 Beasts forest so smoothly this time was because of the route recorded in the jade slip given to him by Gong Jinghuan. If he had entered the 100 Beasts forest carelessly like last time, he would have been attacked by many exotic beasts. In the end, he could only flee in panic, let alone enter the sacred mountain. When the team completely walked out of the 100 Beasts forest, Zhuan finally breathed a sigh of relief. At the foot of the mountain, between the 100 Beasts forest and the sacred mountain, there was a rather wide grassland. At the end of the grassland was the foot of the sacred mountain, where iron trees with a metallic luster grew. We have finally left the 100 Beasts forest. Next, we just have to pass through this grassland and we will reach the foot of the sacred mountain. Everyone in the team breathed a sigh of relief. The biggest obstacle was the 100 Beasts forest. As long as they passed through the 100 Beasts forest, the rest of the journey would be easier. Zhuan raised his head to look at the majestic and huge sacred mountain in front of him. At a glance, he could not see the top of the mountain. At the mountainside of the sacred mountain, there was a dense sea of clouds lingering. Moreover, the sea of clouds was not white. Instead, it was colorful and flashing with all kinds of flowing lights. It looked gorgeous and varied. There are several teams over there. Zhuan looked into the distance and was surprised to find that on the grassland dozens of miles away from them, there were several teams scattered and walking towards the foot of the sacred mountain. These teams also brought many young boys and girls as well as many sacrificial offerings. It's the teams from other cities. They are also here to offer sacrifices to the sacred mountain. In the team, the burly middle-aged man explained with a smile. Chapter 4772. I'll remember it in 1 second. Wonderful, no pop-up window free reading. Master Joie. Let's enter the mountain as well. The other mountain guardians could not help but speak to Zhuan when they saw the teams on the grassland. Wait! Zhuan shook his head and looked up at the divine mountain. He had sensed a strange aura halfway up the divine mountain. It was as if something was about to emerge from the sea of clouds halfway up the mountain. Master Joie, what are we waiting for? Let's go quickly. Don't let the teams from the other cities get there first. The burly middle-aged man said anxiously. The mountain worshipping ceremony was not a grand event for only Yin and Yang City. It was a grand event for all the cities on the giant island. Every time the ceremony was held, the teams from each city would secretly compete with each other to see who could reach the divine mountain first. That was why the other mountain guardians were so eager for Zhuan to set off. They did not want to be left behind. Zhuan was unmoved. His eyes were fixed on the sea of clouds halfway up the divine mountain. His soul was far more powerful than anyone else's. Therefore, he could acutely sense that there was something in the sea of clouds halfway up the mountain. Moreover, this thing was very terrifying. It gave him an irresistible sense of danger. Master Joie. The plains between the 100 Beasts Forest and the Divine Mountain are the safest places. Nothing has ever happened during the mountain worshipping ceremonies in the past. There were no records of any danger. What are you hesitating for? The burly middle-aged man frowned slightly. He felt that Zhuan was being overly cautious. He was slightly displeased. He was not the only one. The other mountain guardians were also beginning to feel displeased. However, they did not dare to disobey Zhuan. After all, the leader of this team was Zhuan. Moreover, Zhuan was the strongest among them. Even if they were displeased, they did not dare to show it. Zhuan ignored the mountain guardian's dissatisfaction. Instead, he stared at the sea of clouds halfway up the mountain. The sense of danger in his mind grew stronger and stronger. Boom! Suddenly, an earth-shattering explosion came from the sea of clouds halfway up the mountain. Then, a terrifying and blazing golden bolt of lightning streaked across the sky and landed heavily on the ground. Ah! Immediately after, a shrill scream came from the plains. Zhuan and the others were shocked to find that a team that was passing through the plains was directly struck by the golden lightning, and all of them were blasted into pieces. Only the strongest person in the group barely managed to resist the golden lightning. However, his entire body was charred black and he was severely injured. Rumble! Suddenly, another bolt of golden lightning fell. The injured cultivator tried to block it, but he couldn't. This second bolt of golden lightning was much more terrifying than the first. His entire body was blasted into pieces. Boom! Boom! The moment the two golden thunderbolts fell, the depths of the sea of clouds seemed to have gone crazy. Suddenly, terrifying golden thunderbolts poured down, instantly covering the entire plain. Many teams that were still walking on the plains were all exposed to the golden lightning. They were all battered and almost completely wiped out. What is going on? The burly middle-aged man's face was ghastly pale. Looking at the hellish plain in front of him, his heart trembled violently. These golden thunderbolts were too terrifying. Even though he was an expert of the way of the heavenly laws, he would be severely injured if he were to face any one of these golden thunderbolts. If he were to be in the middle of these countless golden thunderbolts, he would probably be blasted into pieces. Meanwhile, the mountain guardians, young boys and girls, and soldiers in the team were all terrified. They trembled all over, completely frightened by the scene in front of them. Retreat first. Zhuan's face was solemn. With an order, he led the team a few hundred meters back and hid in the Hundred Beasts forest, silently watching the scene on the plains. Fortunately, the golden thunderbolts seemed to have only landed on the plains and didn't affect the Hundred Beasts forest. Otherwise, Zhuowen's team would probably be annihilated. Zhuowen's divine sense constantly spread out, guarding against any strange beasts that might come charging from the Hundred Beasts forest. However, what surprised him was that there were no traces of strange beasts within the range of his divine sense. When he expanded the range of his divine sense to the maximum, he realized that the powerful strange beasts hidden in the depths of the Hundred Beasts forest were actually fleeing in panic. These golden thunderbolts are really terrifying. Even the strongest strange beasts in the Hundred Beasts forest are afraid. Zhuowen's eyes slowly narrowed. He raised his head and looked into the sky, landing in the depths of the sea of clouds halfway up the sacred mountain. What was hidden in the sea of clouds that caused such terrifying golden thunderbolts to descend? Lord Zhuo, you're really wise and mighty. If you hadn't stopped the team, I'm afraid all of us would have died here. The burly middle-aged man cupped his hands toward Zhuon, his face full of shame. The other mountain guardians also cupped their hands toward Zhuon, apologizing for their lack of manners. Zhuon waved his hand and said, "Now we're on the same team. Naturally, we need to help each other in the same boat. Something must have happened to the sacred mountain. Otherwise, such terrifying golden thunderbolts wouldn't have appeared on the plains." Everyone nodded. In the past, such a terrifying phenomenon had never appeared during the mountain worship ceremony. However, it had appeared this time. Clearly, something must have happened to the sacred mountain. Lord Zhuo, what should we do now? The burly middle-aged man asked respectfully. After witnessing Zhuowen's keen perception and decisiveness, he had absolute trust in Zhuowen. Not only the burly middle-aged man, but everyone in the team raised their heads to look at Zhuon. Wait! After Zhuowen said this sentence, he ordered everyone to set up camp here. The plains were completely filled with golden thunderbolts. If they went there now, it would be no different from courting death. The only thing they could do now was to wait until the golden thunderbolts on the plains completely disappeared. After everyone had set up camp, Zhuon also set up 3 layers of formations at the edge of the camp. After doing this, Zhuon rushed to the border between the Hundred Beasts forest and the plains. Looking at the raging golden thunderbolts on the plains, his eyes were extremely solemn. He discovered that the troops from the other cities on the plain were almost all dead. The entire plain was also devastated by the golden lightning, riddled with holes. Zhuon raised his head to look at the mountainside. He was shocked to find that the sea of clouds on the mountainside was gradually parting to reveal a pair of huge bronze bell-like eyes. The pair of eyes flashed with a blazing golden light. Every time it blinked, it would release endless golden thunderbolts that would make one's scalp numb. What the hell is this? Zhuon was shocked. The owner of this pair of eyes was hidden in the sea of clouds. It was impossible to see its full appearance. However, Zhuon could feel how terrifying this pair of eyes was. It definitely surpassed the Tao of no beginning. The pair of golden eyes seemed to have sensed something. It couldn't help but look at Zhuon, and their eyes met. At this moment, Zhuon only felt an explosion in his mind. It was as if countless thunderbolts were exploding, causing him to retreat continuously. Blood was faintly flowing out of his 7 orifices. Chapter 4773. Thump thump thump. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan as he continuously retreated. He immediately closed his eyes as he circulated the primordial technique within his body to resist the terrifying mental energy surging from the golden eyeball. Zhuowen sat down cross-legged and circulated the primordial grand mist technique. The primordial grand mist stone in the depths of his divine soul emitted a dazzling purple light to resist the terrifying mental force. After an unknown period of time, Zhuowen finally managed to suppress the terrifying mental force from the depths of his divine soul. When Zhuowen opened his eyes again, he discovered that the pair of golden eyeballs halfway up the divine mountain had completely disappeared. However, the golden lightning in the plains in front of him was becoming more and more intense. It was extremely terrifying. What was that thing? There was still a trace of shock in Zhuowen's eyes as he muttered to himself. The pressure from the pair of golden eyeballs was simply too terrifying. It was definitely an existence that surpassed the Tao of no beginning. Fortunately, the pair of golden eyeballs did not target him. Otherwise, Zhuowen's injuries would have been even more serious and his life might have been in danger. Lord Zhuo, are you all right? When Zhuowen returned to the camp, the mountain protectors saw that Zhuowen was bleeding from his 7 orifices and were all shocked. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, "I'm fine." For the next period of time, arrange for some people to take turns to observe the situation of the golden lightning in the plains. Once the golden lightning is extinguished, we will set off for the divine mountain. After speaking, Zhuowen stepped into his own tent and began to recuperate. Looking at the golden eyeballs just now had consumed too much of his mental strength, causing him to feel a little tired. The group stayed at the edge of the 100 Beasts forest for more than 10 days. However, what made the group helpless was that the surging golden lightning in the plains in front of the 100 Beasts forest seemed to be endless. There were no signs of it extinguishing. During this period of time, Zhuowen often came out to check on the situation of the plains, but his heart was heavy. Although the pair of golden eyeballs did not appear again, the never-ending golden lightning was simply too terrifying. The group could not pass through it all. It was absolutely impossible to force their way through. Even Zhuowen would not be able to do so, let alone the rest of the group who were much weaker than him. Is this the only way to the divine mountain? Zhuowen looked at the burly middle-aged man and asked. Actually, there is another way. The inside of the divine mountain. However, the inside is much more dangerous than the yang side. It is also extremely strange. When the burly middle-aged man mentioned the inside of God Mountain, his face was filled with fear. Clearly, he was very afraid of the inside. Lord Zhuo, we cannot go to the inside of the divine mountain. If we go, we will die. That's right. The difference between the inside and the yang side of the divine mountain was like the difference between heaven and earth. It was like the netherworld, very strange. There are many formless and intangible evil spirits that can absorb the yang energy of humans. The mountain protectors all objected. They didn't agree to go to the inside of the divine mountain. Evil spirits? Zhuowen revealed a look of surprise. He finally understood some things about the divine mountain's shady side from the mountain protector. The inside of the divine mountain was dark and damp. It was filled with strange evil spirits. These evil spirits were formless but loved to absorb people's yang energy. For countless years, countless cultivators had tried to enter the divine mountain through the inside. However, none of them had returned. They had become one of the countless dried corpses in the inside. The time limit for the sacrificial ceremony is 1 month, right? If the divine mountain does not receive any offerings after this month, it is said that it will be furious and a disaster will descend. Zhuowen suddenly asked. Hearing this, the divine mountain guardians hesitated for a moment before nodding their heads. It has already been half a month. There is only half a month left before the ceremony ends. Do you still want to drag this out? Zhuowen said calmly. My lord, perhaps the golden lightning on the plains would stop in half a month? If we go to the inside now, won't we? The burly middle-aged man said unwillingly. Don't worry, I don't want to die either. Therefore, we will wait for another 12 days. If the golden lightning does not stop within these 12 days, we will go to the inside to climb the mountain. Zhuowen said calmly. The divine mountain guardians looked at each other. They gritted their teeth and agreed with Zhuowen's decision. Successfully completing the sacrificial ceremony was their top priority. After all, it was related to the future of their yin and yang city. They could not afford to be careless. Time gradually passed. In the blink of an eye, 12 days had passed. However, what made the whole team feel heavy was that the golden lightning was still raging on the plains. Moreover, it was becoming more and more intense. No one dared to advance in the face of such terrifying golden lightning. If we want to climb the mountain, we can only go to the inside. Zhuowen stood up and looked around at everyone. His tone was dignified and unquestionable. He knew that he could not wait any longer. No matter how much the team objected, he had to climb the mountain. This was not because of Zhuowen's sense of duty to the sacrificial ceremony of Yin and Yang City. It was entirely because he thought that climbing the divine mountain during the sacrificial ceremony was relatively safer than usual. This was recorded in the ancient records of Yin and Yang City. The sacrificial ceremony was when the power of the divine mountain was at its weakest. It was also the best time to climb the mountain. This was because many dangers in the divine mountain would gradually disappear during this period. Even many evil spirits in the Yin side would fall into a deep slumber. However, if they entered the divine mountain during other times, it would be very dangerous. Even if they entered the divine mountain, they would not be able to come out alive. Yes. Although many people in the team had heavy hearts, they knew that they could not delay entering the mountain any longer. There were only 3 days left. A round trip to the divine mountain would take at least 1 day. If they waited any longer, it might be easy to enter the mountain, but it would be difficult to leave. There was a shortcut in the 100 Beasts forest that led directly to the Yin side of the divine mountain. Due to the golden lightning, the strange beasts at the edge of the forest had all fled. Therefore, Yun and the rest did not encounter any strange beasts along the way. Lord Zhua, the Yin side of the divine mountain is just ahead. The tall and sturdy middle-aged man beside Zhuowen raised his right hand and pointed forward as he spoke in a deep voice. Zhuowen looked in the direction of the burly middle-aged man's right hand. He saw that the Yin side of the divine mountain was so dark that he could not even see his own fingers. At the foot of the mountain, there were strange withered branches. These withered branches stood in the middle of the darkness and light, as if they were the dividing line between Yin and Yang. My lord, this is the sun god flower. It has a restraining effect on evil spirits. It should be much safer for you to bring it with you. The burly middle-aged man took out a dazzling golden flower and handed it to Zhuowen with a fawning look in his eyes as he spoke with a flattering smile. Zhuowen noticed that everyone in the team had taken out sun god flowers and pinned them to their chests. Everyone was enveloped in a golden glow that shone brightly. You are all well prepared. Zhuowen took the sun god flower and pinned it to his chest. With an order, he led the team into the Yin side of the divine mountain. Chapter 4774. Bush. The moment the team stepped onto the Yin side of the mountain, the sound of wind whistling could be heard. It was as if ghosts were howling in their ears, causing them to feel a chill down their spines. What made the team even more fearful was that the Yin side of the mountain was extremely cold, causing them to feel a chill down their spines. Moreover, the chill of the Yin Qi was not only directed at the body, but also at the depths of the soul. However, the moment the Yin Qi entered their bodies, the divine sunflower on their chests emitted a dazzling light. A scorching heat entered their bodies and dispersed the Yin Qi around them. Corpses. There are so many corpses. Suddenly, a young girl in the team was so frightened that she sat on the ground. Her young face was filled with fear as she pointed forward. Everyone looked over. Indeed, on the slope of the Yin side, corpses were scattered and piled up into small mountains of bones. The rolling Yin Qi was like a long dragon floating above the countless corpses. The whistling sound produced when it passed by the corpses was like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. It was frightening. Don't look at the corpses around you. Follow me up the mountain. Zhuowen was calm and collected. He shouted and led the way to the Yin side. The mountain protectors looked at each other. They were all influenced by Zhuowen and followed closely behind. Zhuowen, the leader, and more than 10 mountain protectors had gone up the mountain. The soldiers and young girls behind them naturally did not dare to disobey and followed closely behind. In particular, the young boys and girls were extremely afraid of the corpses around them. Their legs kept trembling, causing their speed to become extremely slow. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. At this speed, it would take nearly 3 days to reach the top of the mountain. By then, they would not even have a chance to go down the mountain. I'm sorry to trouble you. Zhuowen sighed softly. A strange purple-gold light surged between his eyebrows. Then, a surging and blazing spiritual power surged out and divided into strands, rushing into the glabella of the young boys and girls. Zhuowen's method was similar to hypnosis. He used the tyrannical power of the soul to hypnotize these boys and girls, causing them to automatically filter out the surrounding environment, leaving only the top of the mountain in their minds. Instantly, the gazes of the boy and girl became sluggish, and then the fear on their faces disappeared. Instead, they calmly and quickly followed Zhuon. This method was similar to possession, but Zhuon had never thought of possessing these boys and girls. He only planned on using this method to control them and suppress their fear. Soon, the team sped up and headed for the top of the mountain. As the group continued to ascend, Zhuon discovered that the pressure of the sacred mountain was becoming more and more terrifying. Even he could not hover half a meter above the ground. At the same time, more and more corpses appeared in the surroundings, piling up into mountains. Each mountain of corpses looked like a pyramid from afar. The yin energy that filled the surroundings grew denser and denser, becoming more and more terrifying. Suddenly, when Zhuon had just walked 1/3 of the way to the top of the mountain, a bone-chilling aura shot toward him like an arrow. Zhuowen's pupils shrank, and a strong sense of danger rose in his mind. Without thinking, his right hand formed a palm, and divine power poured out and blasted out. Bang! When Zhuowen collided with that aura, a terrifying aura of extreme yin and extreme coldness surged forth. Zhuowen's right hand instantly turned dark, and his entire hand stiffened. But soon, Zhuon circulated his divine power and dispelled the darkness that covered the surface of his palm. Zhuowen raised his head, and only now did he notice to his astonishment that the owner of the strange aura of extreme coldness was an evil spirit with a savage appearance. The evil spirit roared angrily. Just now, Zhuowen's palm had destroyed half of its body, but it quickly absorbed the surrounding yin energy and revived. It's an evil spirit. Be careful. When everyone saw the evil spirit clearly, they all took out their divine weapons and looked at the evil spirit in front of them with fear. This evil spirit is very similar to ghosts and ghosts. Zhuon looked at the evil spirit in front of him and thought to himself. The moment Zhuon repelled the evil spirit, the surroundings were instantly filled with ghostly wails and wolf howls. So many evil spirits. Oh no, we're surrounded by evil spirits. The expressions of the mountain protectors changed drastically. Divine power erupted from their bodies, and they looked at the evil spirits surrounding them with fear. As for the ordinary soldiers who were escorting the supplies, they were all so scared that their legs went numb. They looked at the evil spirits around them in horror. As for the boys and girls who were protected in the center, because they were temporarily controlled by Zhuowen's divine soul, their eyes were dull, and they turned a blind eye to the evil spirits around them. After smelling the aura of the cultivators, the evil spirits were like wild beasts that had seen their prey, and they rushed over crazily. Although the evil spirits were quite wary of the sun god flower on everyone's body, it did not dispel their thoughts of attacking. They continued to attack the group in a frenzy. In an instant, the group was engaged in a fierce battle with the evil spirits. This group of evil spirits was not strong, and everyone could basically kill them. However, the problem was that the evil spirits were shapeless and incorporeal, and they could not be killed. Everyone used their divine weapons to disperse the evil spirits, but the evil spirits quickly absorbed them and reassembled their bodies. Zhuon grabbed the evil spirit in front of him with his right hand and circulated the primordial grand mist technique, quickly absorbing the evil spirit. To Zhuowen's surprise, the primordial grand mist technique could really convert the evil spirits into his own energy. Moreover, the effect was much better than the ghosts. Swallow! Since the evil spirits could be absorbed by the primordial grand mist technique, Zhuon did not hold back anymore. He circulated the primordial grand mist technique in his body and opened all the acupoints in his body. All the evil spirits that came close to Zhuon were forcibly absorbed by Zhuon into his acupoints and turned into his own divine energy. As Zhuon continued to devour the evil spirits, he quickly attracted the attention of many people present. When they saw the evil spirits vanish wherever Zhuon passed, they were all dumbfounded. Their jaws almost fell to the ground. They might not be able to destroy one evil spirit even if they fought with their lives on the line, but Jun did not seem to do anything. He just took a step and destroyed many evil spirits. This was too terrifying. Zhuowen's speed became faster and faster. Everywhere he passed, the evil spirits were devoured and refined by him. Not long after, all the evil spirits present were dealt with by Zhuowen alone. Everyone also heaved a sigh of relief one after another. Continue forward. Zhuowen did not explain why he could deal with the evil spirits. Instead, he waved his hand and signaled for everyone to continue forward. Right now, he was too pressed for time. How could he have the time to explain to others? Moreover, this was Zhuowen's secret to begin with. How could he reveal it to others so easily? Although the mountain guardians were curious about how Zhuowen could deal with the evil spirits so easily, they did not dare to ask since the latter did not want to explain. They could only follow closely behind Zhuowen. However, their hearts were filled with hope. With Zhuowen around, this trip would be much safer. Chapter 4775. Full text. On the inside of the divine mountain, evil spirits emerged one after another, wailing and howling. Zhuowen was the first to bear the brunt, walking at the front of the group. Countless evil spirits rushed toward Zhuowen. However, the strange thing was that these terrifying and ferocious evil spirits dispersed the moment they came into contact with Zhuowen. Zhuowen circulated the primordial technique faster and faster, and the speed at which he absorbed the evil spirits also increased. In the beginning, Zhuowen needed 10 breaths of time to absorb an entire evil spirit, but now he could completely absorb the evil spirit's energy in 3 breaths of time. Moreover, the energy that erupted from his body was like an invisible giant hand that crushed all the evil spirits that were pouncing towards him. It wasn't just the evil spirits in front of Zhuowen. The evil spirits that pounced on him were destroyed by Zhuowen's invisible energy before they could even get close to the group. The mountain protector and everyone in the group looked at Zhuowen's back in admiration. They could be considered experienced and knowledgeable, but they had never seen Zhuowen's terrifying methods. Even if it was an expert with the Tao of no beginning, if they entered the inside of the divine mountain, they would have no other choice but to avoid the evil spirits. Moreover, their lives might be in danger. But Zhuowen could directly destroy the evil spirits, and even take care of the evil spirits around him. This method had long surpassed the Tao of no beginning. It's really a great blessing to have Lord Zhuo leading us into the divine mountain this time. The greatest danger of the inside of the divine mountain are these evil spirits. Now that they are completely suppressed by Lord Zhuo, it seems like we are in the bag this time. Everyone in the group muttered to themselves, and their faces were filled with gratitude. Of course, they didn't know that Zhuowen didn't simply destroy the evil spirits, but directly devoured them and absorbed them into his own strength. Several hours later, the group arrived at the mountainside. Zhuowen's aura had become extremely powerful, and his aura was still growing. It was as if his body contained some kind of furnace, constantly burning and generating terrifying and blazing energy and warmth. Degrees. What a powerful aura. Is Lord Zhuo about to break through? The group stopped. At this moment, although the mountainside was littered with corpses, the number of evil spirits had decreased greatly. It was desolate. At this moment, everyone's eyes fell on Zhu. They could naturally feel the terrifying aura emanating from him. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He could feel that the aura in his body was gradually unable to be suppressed. His cultivation had already reached the pinnacle of the path of heavenly Tao, and now that he had absorbed so much evil spirit energy, his cultivation had finally reached the brink of a breakthrough. However, Zhuowen did not break through immediately. Instead, he looked at the sea of clouds around him. At the mountainside of the divine mountain, there was a dense sea of clouds. He had seen a pair of golden eyes in the sea of clouds at the foot of the mountain. He was very clear that there should be an extremely terrifying thing hidden in the sea of clouds. If he were to break through now and that thing appeared, he would be finished. But what made Zhuowen frown was that the sea of clouds was boundless, and it was impossible to see what was inside. Roar! Suddenly, a violent roar rang out, and a huge figure suddenly rushed out from the sea of clouds in front of them. This figure was 100 feet in size, and its entire body was rotten. Wherever it passed, the ground would condense into a strange black frost, and rolling yin qi would constantly gush out from this figure. It's an evil spirit. This evil spirit is so powerful, it's definitely not an ordinary evil spirit. Not good, he's running towards us. We can't stop him at all. Everyone in the group looked at the huge evil spirit rushing towards them, and their expressions all changed. The feeling that this evil spirit gave them was much more terrifying than the other evil spirits, causing them to not have any intention of resisting at all. Zhuan rushed out, unleashing 100 feet large divine soul sword intent, and suddenly stood on the huge evil spirit's body. The evil spirit was sent flying by the slash. A third of its body had collapsed, but it still rushed towards Zhuan crazily. What made Zhuan even more fearful was that the 1/3 of the evil spirit that had collapsed was actually rapidly absorbing the surrounding yin qi, and reformed an intact part. Zhuan slashed out 3 times in a row, and destroyed the huge evil spirit. What made Zhuan's heart sink was that the evil spirit reformed once again. Although he didn't use the primordial grandmist technique to devour this time, the power of the primordial grandmist technique attached to the divine soul sword intent should be enough to destroy the evil spirit. But the huge evil spirit in front of him actually didn't completely collapse, and was able to reform. It was truly strange. Let's see if you can reform after being devoured by me. Zhuan looked at the evil spirit that was getting closer and closer, and knew that he had to completely destroy this evil spirit. Otherwise, everyone behind him would be in danger. Thinking of this, Zhuan leaped up and smashed his fist into the evil spirit's face. Rumble! His fist force was like a dragon, and the evil spirit's head exploded. Zhuan circulated the primordial grandmist technique and devoured it in an instant. What made Zhuan happy was that the evil spirit's head didn't regenerate after it was destroyed. Zhuan snorted coldly, and his right hand formed a claw and grabbed the headless evil spirit's shoulder. The primordial grandmist technique circulated at high speed, and the evil spirit's head was instantly devoured. Zhuan's expression changed slightly, because the energy contained in this evil spirit was purer and more vigorous than the other evil spirits he had encountered before. After this energy entered Zhuan's body, Zhuan could no longer suppress the breakthrough energy in his body. Boom! A terrifying sound of thunder resounded in the void, and a terrifying aura erupted from Zhuan's body. Moreover, it became more and more terrifying and more powerful. In an instant, the sea of clouds that surrounded the mountainside was torn open by Zhuan's powerful aura, and the divine mountain's body seemed to tremble. This is the Tao of no beginning? In the instant that everyone in the group discovered that Zhuan had broken through, they discovered that Zhuan was actually breaking through to the Tao of no beginning. They couldn't be wrong about this aura. This also meant that Zhuan's cultivation was only in the Tao of Heaven's Tao, and he had just stepped into the Tao of no beginning. Isn't Lord Zhuo too powerful? He's only in the Tao of Heaven's Tao, but his battle strength has already surpassed most of the Tao of no beginning experts. The burly middle-aged man's eyes were filled with admiration, and a strong feeling of admiration for Zhuan rose in his heart. The rest of the group nodded their heads in agreement. Zhuan's strength was truly admirable. Roughly an hour later, Zhuan suddenly opened his eyes, and a ray of divine light shot out from the depths of his eyes. A mysterious and boundless Tao ripple surged out from Mu Feng's body, and layer by layer, it spread out in all directions, as if it was endless, without beginning or end. He had finally broken through to the Tao of no beginning. This time, just the benefits that the evil spirit had brought him on this trip to the divine mountain had already surprised him. Apart from this, what other surprises would the divine mountain have? Zhuan raised his head to look at the sea of clouds in the sky, and discovered that the sea of clouds had regained its calmness, as if there was nothing inside. That thing hiding in the sea of clouds didn't discover me, or did it not care about me at all? Zhuan's heart was filled with doubts. The commotion caused by his breakthrough wasn't small, and he didn't believe that the owner of the pair of golden eyes in the sea of clouds wouldn't be able to sense it. However, it didn't appear, which made Zhuan feel very strange, but he heaved a sigh of relief. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.